The day I arrived at Jennifer's house, I knew something was wrong. The way her smile tightened when she opened the door, the quick glance she exchanged with Rob before inviting me in. These were the subtle signs I'd learned to read over the years. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Mom, we've had to make some changes to the sleeping arrangements, Jennifer said as she led me through their immaculate colonial home. Her voice had that artificial brightness she used when delivering bad news. Emma's room is being repainted, and Tyler's is too small, so we've set you up in the attic space. The attic. Not the guest room with its ensuite bathroom and memory foam mattress. The room I'd stayed in during every visit for the past 5 years. No, this time I was being relegated to the dusty storage space above the house. The guest room? I asked quietly, already knowing the answer. Rob's parents are coming tomorrow, Jennifer replied, not quite meeting my eyes. They'll be taking that room. I hope you understand. I did understand. All too well. I understood that at 62 years old, after raising 2 children on my own, after helping Jennifer with the down payment on this very house, I ranked below her in-laws in my own daughter's esteem. I've always been the kind of mother who puts her children first. When Richard died 17 years ago, leaving me widowed at 45 with 2 teenagers to raise, I didn't crumble. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital where I worked as a nurse, sold our family home to move to a smaller place, and made sure both Jennifer and David completed their education without student loans. Mom, why don't you put those bags down and I'll show you upstairs, Jennifer said, gesturing toward the narrow door at the end of the hallway that led to the attic stairs. I followed her up the steep steps, each one creaking under our weight. The space was exactly as I'd feared, a converted storage room with a twin bed shoved between cardboard boxes. A small desk lamp provided the only light besides a tiny window that overlooked the backyard. The ceiling sloped sharply on both sides, meaning I could only stand upright in the center of the room. We cleared some space, Jennifer said, as if this were some kind of achievement. There's a fan if it gets too warm, and I put fresh sheets on the bed. It's fine, I said, my throat tight. What else could I say? I'd driven 6 hours to spend a week with my grandchildren. I wasn't about to turn around and drive back because my daughter had put me in the attic. Great. Jennifer's relief was palpable. Dinner's at 7. Rob's boss and his wife are joining us, so wear something nice. Her eyes darted to my simple blouse and slacks before she disappeared down the stairs. I sat on the edge of the bed, which sagged in the middle, and looked around at what my daughter considered acceptable accommodations for her mother. Beside me was a cardboard box labeled Christmas decorations, and across the room was a rack of Jennifer's old clothes she no longer wore but couldn't bear to part with. The message was clear. I belonged with the other things Jennifer no longer had use for, but kept out of obligation. My phone buzzed with a text from Dorothy, my best friend since nursing school. Did you arrive okay? How's the family? I hesitated. Then typed, made it. We'll call you later. I couldn't bring myself to tell her about the attic. Not yet. Instead, I unpacked my small suitcase, hanging my clothes on a rolling rack Jennifer had placed beside the bed, and tucked my toiletries into a plastic shower caddy she'd left for me to carry to the bathroom downstairs, 2 floors down from my attic quarters. Just as I was about to head downstairs, I noticed an envelope that had fallen from my purse. I picked it up, running my fingers over the official seal of the State Lottery Commission. Inside was the confirmation I'd received yesterday, a winner's notification for the sum of $4, $2 million, or $1 million after taxes, taken as a lump sum. I'd stopped at a gas station on my way home from my last shift at the hospital 3 weeks ago and bought a ticket on a whim. I still couldn't quite believe it was real. I hadn't told Jennifer or David yet. I'd planned to surprise them during this visit, to sit down with Jennifer and her family, call David on video chat, and share the news together. I'd imagined their surprise, their joy, maybe even their gratitude. Now, looking around at the attic, I wasn't so sure. The sound of voices downstairs pulled me from my thoughts. I tucked the envelope into the inner pocket of my suitcase and made my way carefully down the steep stairs. In the kitchen, Jennifer was arranging appetizers on a silver platter while speaking sharply to Emma, my 16-year-old granddaughter. "I told you to change that shirt before they arrive. You look like you just rolled out of bed." "It's designer, Mom," Emma protested. "Lily's mom bought her the same one." Jennifer sighed dramatically. "Fine, but pull your hair back at least, and help your brother set the table." When Emma spotted me, her face lit up. "Grandma!" She rushed over, wrapping her arms around me. "I didn't hear you come in." "Your mother put me in the attic," I said with a smile, trying to make it sound like a joke. Emma's face fell. "What? But I told Mom you could have my room. I don't mind the pull-out couch in the den for a week." Jennifer cut in sharply. "Emma, I already explained why that wouldn't work. The den is right off the living room and we'll be entertaining guests all week." She turned to me. "Mom, could you please not undermine me with the children?" I blinked, stunned. I wasn't— "Tyler!" Jennifer called, ignoring my response. "Come say hello to Grandma." My 13-year-old grandson shuffled into the kitchen, his eyes barely lifting from his phone. "Hey, Grandma," he muttered. "Give your grandmother a proper greeting," Rob said as he entered the room, still adjusting his tie. He was a tall man with the kind of conventional good looks that had always left me cold. Too perfect, too calculated. The kind of man who remembered everyone's golf handicap but forgot his anniversary 3 years running. Tyler dutifully pocketed his phone and gave me a quick hug. "Good to see you," he said, and I caught a glimpse of the sweet boy beneath the teenage facade. "Good to see you too, sweetheart," I replied, squeezing his shoulders. "You've grown at least 2 inches since Christmas." 3, he corrected with a hint of pride. Rob checked his watch. "They'll be here in 20 minutes. Jennifer, is the wine breathing? And Mom?" He paused, looking me over. "Jennifer? Mentioned wearing something nice?" I looked down at my outfit, perfectly respectable for a family dinner, and felt a flush of embarrassment. I didn't realize this was a formal occasion. "It's not formal," Jennifer said quickly. "But Richard and Diane are very particular. You know how Rob's boss can be." I didn't know, actually. My daughter rarely shared details of her life with me anymore, unless they involved requests for babysitting or contributions to the grandkids' college funds. But I nodded and said, "I'll go change." As I made my way back up 2 flights of stairs to the attic, I heard Tyler ask, "Why is Grandma staying in the attic? Isn't that where we put the Christmas tree in winter?" I didn't hear Jennifer's response. In the attic, I changed into the one dress I'd packed, a navy blue shift with a cardigan that was the nicest thing I owned until yesterday. After receiving confirmation of my lottery win, I'd splurged on a designer outfit for the first time in my life, a beautiful silk blouse and tailored pants that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. But I'd left them at home, saving them for when I shared my news. Now I wished I had them, if only to see the look on Jennifer's face. Back downstairs, the doorbell rang just as I reached the bottom step. Rob answered it, his voice booming with artificial enthusiasm as he welcomed his boss and his wife into their home. "Richard, Diane, wonderful to see you both. Please come in." Jennifer appeared at his side, the perfect corporate wife in her black cocktail dress and pearls. "We're so glad you could join us tonight," she said, her voice as polished as her appearance. I hung back, observing the careful choreography of my daughter's life. She'd been this way since college, always striving, always concerned with appearances, desperate to be accepted by people whose approval seemed, to me at least, hardly worth the effort. Richard, a silver-haired man with an expensive watch and the confident air of someone used to being deferred to, handed Jennifer a bottle of wine. Chateau Margaux, 2005. We picked it up in Bordeaux last month. How thoughtful, Jennifer gushed, though I knew she could barely tell the difference between red and white wine, let alone appreciate a vintage Bordeaux. She'd never been interested in wine until she married Rob. Mom, Jennifer called, finally acknowledging my presence. Come meet Rob's boss, Richard Matthews, and his wife, Diane. I stepped forward with a polite smile. It's a pleasure to meet you both. I'm Margaret Wilson, Jennifer's mother. Ah, the nurse, Richard said, his tone suggesting he'd just identified a lesser species. Rob mentioned you were visiting. Still working, are you? I just retired last month, I said. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. After 40 years. How nice for you, Diane murmured, her eyes already drifting past me to the expensive artwork on Jennifer's walls. Pieces I knew she'd chosen to match her furniture, rather than out of any appreciation for the art itself. Shall we move to the dining room? Jennifer suggested. Dinner's ready to be served. As we moved toward the dining room, I noticed the place settings. Fine china, crystal glasses, silver cutlery. All wedding gifts I'd helped select when Jennifer and Rob got married 12 years ago. Jennifer had seated Richard and Diane on either side of Rob, who sat at the head of the table. She took the seat beside Richard, leaving me between Diane and Emma, as far from the guests of honor as possible without actually placing me at a children's table in the kitchen. The dinner itself was a showcase of Jennifer's insecurities. Every dish was presented with an explanation of its difficulty or exclusivity. The truffles were flown in from Italy just yesterday. Or, the technique for this reduction took me months to perfect. I knew for a fact that Jennifer had hired a caterer. I'd seen the van parked down the street as I arrived, but I kept silent, playing along with the charade as Rob discussed business with Richard, and Jennifer inserted herself, whenever possible, with carefully researched comments designed to impress. Margaret, Diane said suddenly, turning to me during a lull in the conversation. Jennifer tells us you've been helping with the down payment for their lake house. How generous of you to support them that way. I nearly choked on my wine. This was the first I'd heard of any lake house, and certainly the first I'd heard about helping pay for one. I looked at Jennifer, whose face had gone rigid with panic. I think there's been some confusion, I said carefully. I wasn't aware Jennifer and Rob were purchasing a lake house. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Richard cleared his throat. Perhaps I've spoken out of turn, Diane said with a thin smile. I must have misunderstood. Jennifer jumped in, her voice tight. Mom's been so supportive over the years. We couldn't have managed without her. The lake house is still in the very early planning stages, of course. Of course, I echoed, taking another sip of wine to hide my hurt. What else had my daughter been saying about me? What other plans had she made that involved my money without bothering to consult me? After dinner, I excused myself to help clear the plates, ignoring Jennifer's insistence that I should remain seated with the guests. In the kitchen, Emma joined me, her young face troubled. Are you mad at Mom? She whispered, loading dishes into the dishwasher. I sighed. Not mad, sweetheart, just surprised. About the lake house? She nodded. They've been talking about it for months. Dad said they're just waiting for the money from you to make the down payment. The casual way she said it, as if my financial support was a foregone conclusion, made something shift inside me. All these years, I'd given and given, never asking for anything in return except love and respect. And now I was sleeping in a mouse attic while my daughter discussed taking more of my money she thought I barely had, to buy a vacation home without so much as asking me first. Emma, I said quietly, Do you think it's right that I'm staying in the attic while your other grandparents get the guest room? Emma looked uncomfortable. Mom said you wouldn't mind, that you're low maintenance. She winced as she said, it, clearly repeating something she'd heard. Low maintenance, like a houseplant or an old car. That's what my daughter thought of me. I thought of the lottery ticket upstairs, of the two $1 million that would soon be in my bank account. I thought of all the dreams I'd deferred, the trips I hadn't taken, the life I hadn't lived, because I was too busy making sure my children had everything they needed. You know, I said to Emma, managing a smile, your mom might be right about that, but people can change. Back in the dining room, coffee and dessert were being served. Rob was in the middle of what appeared to be a well-rehearsed anecdote about a business trip to Tokyo, while Jennifer laughed appreciatively despite having heard the story at least a dozen times before. I'd heard it myself on my last visit. I took my seat just as Rob finished his story to polite laughter from Richard and Diane. Mom, Jennifer said, turning to me with forced brightness, why don't you tell Richard and Diane about your retirement plans? You must be looking forward to finally having some time to yourself. The way she emphasized finally made it clear what she was really saying. After years of interfering in our lives, you can now fade quietly into the background. Actually, I said, surprising myself with my calm, I do have some exciting plans in the works. I've been thinking a lot about what I want the next chapter of my life to look like. Oh? Jennifer looked suspicious. You haven't mentioned anything to me. Haven't I? I smiled. How strange, considering how openly we discuss major life decisions in this family, like lake houses, for instance. Jennifer's cheeks flushed. Pink. Rob jumped in, clearly trying to change the subject. Mom's been a nurse for 40 years, delivered hundreds of babies in her time. Isn't that right, Mom? That's right, I said. And now I'm delivering myself right into a new life. How lovely, Diane said with the practiced interest of someone who had perfected the art of seeming engaged while thinking about something else entirely. Will you be staying in your same little house, or perhaps moving to one of those retirement communities? Before I could answer, Jennifer cut in. Mom loves her house. She'd never leave it, would you, Mom? All those memories of Dad. Actually, I said, looking directly at my daughter, I've been thinking it might be time for a change, a significant one. Jennifer's smile froze. She knew that tone in my voice. It was the same one I'd used when I told her father, all those years ago, that if he didn't stop drinking, I would leave him. He didn't, and I did, taking the children with me. Jennifer had been 10 at the time, old enough to remember, young enough to resent me for it, despite the fact that her father had chosen the bottle over his family time and again. Well, Richard said, clearly sensing the tension, change can be good at any age. I always say it's never too late to reinvent yourself. He glanced at his watch. Diane, we should probably think about heading out, early tea time tomorrow. As they made their preparations to leave, exchanging air kisses and hearty handshakes, I noticed Jennifer pulling Emma aside, whispering furiously in her ear. Emma nodded reluctantly and approached me as the front door closed behind Richard and Diane. Grandma, she said, her voice unnaturally bright, would you like to watch a movie with me in the den? There's this new rom-com I've been dying to see. I loved my granddaughter dearly, but I wasn't born yesterday. Did your mother ask you to keep me occupied while she and your father have a private discussion? Emma blushed. Kind of. But I really do want to watch a movie with you. I smiled and kissed her cheek. Another time, sweetheart. I'm quite tired from the drive. I think I'll head up to my quarters for the night. The attic, Emma said plainly. You can say it, Grandma. It's ridiculous they put you up there. Emma, Jennifer snapped from across the room. That's enough. Go help your brother finish his science project. It's summer vacation, Emma protested. Now, Emma. With a dramatic teenage sigh, Emma trudged upstairs, leaving me alone with Jennifer and Rob. Well, I said into the awkward silence. Thank you for dinner. I think I'll turn in. Mom, wait, Jennifer said, her voice softening into the tone she used when she wanted something. About what Diane said. The lake house. We were going to talk to you about it this week. We found the perfect place on Lake Winnipesaukee. 3 bedrooms, a private dock. Sounds lovely, I said, my voice neutral. It is, Rob confirmed eagerly. Great investment. Property values in that area have been climbing steadily for years. We were hoping, Jennifer continued, that you might consider helping us with the down payment. Just a loan, of course. We'd pay you back eventually. Eventually, I repeated. Well, yes, Jennifer said, looking uncomfortable. Once Rob makes partner, which should be any day now. And how much would this loan be? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. Jennifer and Rob exchanged glances. About $80,000, Rob said. We've saved up $20,000 ourselves, but the full down payment is $100,000. $80,000, nearly everything I had in savings after a lifetime of work. Money I'd set aside for my own retirement, for emergencies, for the peace of mind of knowing I wouldn't be a burden on my children in my old age. And they wanted all of it, for a vacation home, while I slept in their attic. I'll think about it, I said, which was not the enthusiastic yes they'd clearly expected. Mom, Jennifer said, her voice taking on an edge. We need to know soon. The sellers have another offer. I said I'll think about it, Jennifer. I've had a long day and I'd like to go to bed now. As I climbed the 2 flights of stairs to the attic, I heard Rob's voice drift up from below. I told you we should have waited to bring it up. Now you've made her feel uncomfortable. She's my mother, Jennifer replied. It's not like she's going to say no. She never says no to me. The words hit me like a physical blow. Is that what my daughter really thought of me? That I was nothing more than an ATM she could withdraw from whenever she wanted, with no thought to my own needs or feelings? In the attic, I sat on the edge of the sagging twin bed and pulled out my phone. It was time to call Dorothy. Well, she answered on the first ring. How's the family reunion going? They put me in the attic, Dot, I said without preamble. Not the guest room, the actual attic, with the Christmas decorations and old clothes. There was a moment of stunned silence, then Dorothy's outraged voice. They did what? And, that's not all, I continued, lying back on the bed and staring at the sloped ceiling. They want me to give them $80,000 for a down payment on a lake house. Money. They've already told people I'm giving them, by the way. Oh, Maggie, Dorothy sighed. What are you going to do? I thought about the lottery ticket, about the $1 million that was about to change my life in ways Jennifer couldn't begin to imagine. I'm going to sleep on it, I said. But Dot? I think it's time I started putting myself first for a change. Hallelujah, Dorothy replied. It's about damn time. As I got ready for bed, balancing my toiletries on the edge of the sink in the second-floor bathroom and trying not to wake anyone, I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made over the years. The vacations I hadn't taken, the classes I hadn't enrolled in, the dates I hadn't gone on because I was too busy being both mother and father to my children. I thought about the way Jennifer spoke about me to her in-laws, the way she assumed I would hand over my life savings without question, the way she put me in an attic without a second thought. I thought about the lottery ticket and how differently this visit might have gone if Jennifer had treated me with basic respect before knowing I was wealthy. As I climbed back up to the attic and settled into the lumpy twin bed, I made a decision. I wouldn't tell Jennifer about the lottery win. Not yet. First, I wanted to see if there was anything left of the daughter I'd raised, the one who once made me Mother's Day cards proclaiming me her hero and her best friend. I wanted to know if Jennifer valued me at all without my money in the equation. Tomorrow would be the first day of finding out. And one way or another, by the end of this visit, everything was going to change. I woke up with a stiff neck, the morning light filtering through the small, dusty window of the attic. For a moment, I forgot where I was, reaching automatically for my bedside lamp that wasn't there. The events of yesterday flooded back. Jennifer's thinly veiled contempt, the awkward dinner, the audacious request for $80,000 while I slept among forgotten holiday decorations. The house was quiet. According to the small travel clock I'd placed on a nearby box, it was just past 6. A lifetime of early hospital shifts had made it impossible for me to sleep in, regardless of how uncomfortable the accommodations might be. I stretched, wincing as my back protested after a night on the ancient mattress. I made my way carefully down the narrow stairs, trying not to wake anyone. The kitchen was immaculate, no sign of last night's elaborate dinner remaining. I put on a pot of coffee and looked out the window at Jennifer's perfectly landscaped backyard. A swing set sat in one corner, barely used now that Tyler was more interested in video games than outdoor play. Emma's volleyball net stood in another, a reminder of the sports scholarship Jennifer was determined her daughter would earn. I'd just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Rob appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his running clothes, apparently surprised to find me there. "Morning," he said, slightly awkward. "You're up early." "Old habits," I replied, lifting my cup. "Would you like some coffee?" "Thanks, but I'll grab something after my run." He fidgeted with his smartwatch, clearly uncomfortable being alone with me. "About last night. Jennifer sometimes gets ahead of herself. We don't expect you to decide about the lake house right away." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I appreciate that, Rob." He hesitated, then added, "It's just that Jennifer has her heart set on it. You know how she gets when she wants something." I did know. My daughter had always been stubbornly determined, even as a child. But that determination had morphed into something harder, more entitled, as she'd grown older. "I'll give it careful thought," I said, which seemed to satisfy him for the moment. He nodded and headed out the door for his morning run. Alone again, I sat at the kitchen island and pulled out my phone. I had an email from the Lottery Commission regarding the meeting I'd scheduled for next week to collect my winnings. There was also a text from Dorothy. "How was the attic? Did the ghost of Christmas past visit you?" Despite everything, I smiled. Dorothy had always known how to make me laugh, even in the most difficult situations. "Survived the night. Family. Wants $80,000 for lake house down payment." Dorothy's response was immediate. "What? Tell them to pound sand." I was still considering my reply when Emma wandered into the kitchen, hair tousled from sleep, wearing pajama shorts and an oversized t-shirt. "Morning, Grandma," she yawned, heading straight for the refrigerator. "Did you sleep okay?" "I've had better nights," I admitted. "But it's fine." Emma grabbed the orange juice and poured herself a glass. "I told Mom it was stupid to put you in the attic. We could have worked something out." "Your mother has her reasons," I said diplomatically. Emma rolled her eyes. "Yeah, like impressing Dad's boss's parents more than her own mom." She leaned against the counter, studying me. "Why do you let her talk to you like that?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "Like what? Like you're, I don't know. Less than her, less important." Emma's perception surprised. At 16, she saw more than I'd given her credit for. She's always going on about how Grandma and Grandpa Parker are so sophisticated and traveled, and how you're different. Different, I repeated, feeling a small ache in my chest. "Not in a good way," Emma clarified unnecessarily. "It's stupid. You're way cooler than Grandma Parker. She never wants to hear about my music or my friends." All she cares about is if I'm keeping my GPA high enough for the right colleges. She made air quotes around the words. I smiled, touched by her loyalty. Well, thank you for that. It's just true. Emma shrugged. Dad's parents are coming today, by the way. Mom's been freaking out, cleaning everything again after the cleaners already came yesterday. That's why she's not up yet. She was still scrubbing the guest bathroom. At like midnight. The guest bathroom, with its heated floors and rainfall shower, that I wouldn't be using because I was 2 floors away in the attic. What are the plans for today? I asked, changing the subject. Mom's planned this whole welcome lunch thing for Grandma and Grandpa Parker. Tyler and I are supposed to wear those matching outfits she bought us. Emma made a gagging noise. Then tonight is some charity thing at the country club. Adults only. She gave me a pointed look. Which apparently doesn't include you, because Mom said you'd be staying home with us. Did she now? I said, feeling something stir inside me. Not exactly anger, more like resolve. She said you wouldn't be interested because it's not your scene, and you'd feel out of place. Emma mimicked her mother's voice perfectly, which is total BS because you'd probably have more fun than any of them. Maybe I would, I said thoughtfully. What time is this charity event? Emma looked surprised at my interest. 7, I think. It's some silent auction thing for the hospital's new children's wing. A hospital fundraiser. After 40 years as a nurse, many of them in pediatrics, that was exactly my scene. Far more than it was Jennifer's, who had only set foot in hospitals for births and the occasional emergency. What's the dress code? I asked casually. Super fancy. Mom bought a new dress just for it. Emma tilted her head, studying me. Why? Are you thinking of going? Maybe, I said. I did just retire from 40 years of nursing. A hospital fundraiser seems appropriate. Emma grinned. That would be awesome. Mom would freak. Emma! Jennifer's voice called from upstairs. Are you up? I need your help with the guest room. Emma rolled her eyes again. Coming! She called back, then lowered her voice. If you go tonight, wear something amazing. Like, really amazing. She gave me a conspiratorial smile before heading upstairs. I sat with my coffee, considering the possibilities. I hadn't packed anything remotely suitable for a charity gala, but there was a shopping mall not far from here. And for the first time in my life, money was no object. An hour later, I was dressed and had borrowed Jennifer's car keys from the hook by the door, leaving a note that I'd gone out for a few errands. I drove to the Oak Ridge Mall, a sprawling complex that included several high-end department stores. In the past, I'd window shopped here occasionally, but rarely purchased anything beyond the basics. Today would be different. I walked into Nordstrom with purpose, heading straight for the women's formal wear department. A young sales associate approached me with a practiced smile. Can I help you find something today? Yes, I said, straightening my shoulders. I need an evening gown for a charity event tonight. Something elegant, but memorable. She looked me over, her professional assessment barely concealing her doubt that I could afford what she might show me. Do you have a particular budget in mind? In the past, I might have named a modest figure, limiting myself to the sale rack. But not today. Price isn't a concern, I said, enjoying the subtle shift in her expression. I'm looking for quality and impact. Of course, she said, her smile warming considerably. I have several designers that might work beautifully for you. Would you like to start with Oscar de la Renta, or perhaps Carolina Herrera? Show me everything, I said. 2 hours later, I left the mall with more bags than I'd ever carried at once. A midnight blue beaded gown with a modest but flattering neckline, silver heels that added 3 inches to my height, a clutch purse that cost more than my first car, and jewelry that sparkled with an understated elegance I'd never been able to afford before. I'd even stopped at the makeup counter, For a consultation, emerging with a bag of cosmetics and a scheduled appointment for professional makeup application later that afternoon. When I returned to Jennifer's house, I found it in full pre-arrival chaos. Jennifer was directing Tyler on the correct placement of fresh flowers while simultaneously speaking into her phone's headset, apparently giving instructions to a caterer. Rob was nowhere to be seen, probably at the golf club with his father, who I gathered had arrived early. "Mom!" Jennifer exclaimed when she spotted me. "Where have you been? The Parkers will be here any minute." "I had some shopping to do," I said mildly, keeping my bags close. Jennifer's eyes darted to the Nordstrom bags, a flicker of curiosity quickly replaced by irritation. "Well, can you please help Tyler finish with these arrangements? I need to check on the catering, and Emma's still not dressed properly." Without waiting for my response, she hurried off, still talking into her headset. Tyler gave me a half-hearted smile as I set my bags on the bottom step of the staircase. "Need some help with those flowers?" I asked. "Mom wants them evenly distributed throughout common areas but not overwhelming," he quoted, clearly having heard the instructions multiple times. I laughed. "That's specific. Let's see what we can do." Together, we arranged flowers in the aishi, living room and dining room, chatting about his summer activities and the video game he was currently obsessed with. Unlike Emma, Tyler was less aware of the family dynamics at play, still young enough to accept things at face value. It was refreshing. "Grandma," he said suddenly, "is it true you're giving Mom and Dad money for a lake house?" "So, perhaps not." Entirely unaware. "I'm considering it," I said carefully. "Did your parents discuss that with you?" He shrugged. "They talk about it all the time. Dad says it's a done deal, and we'll be spending summers there starting next year." "I see," I said, feeling that resolve harden further within me. "Well, nothing's final yet." "I hope you do it," Tyler said earnestly. "Dad promised I could get a jet ski if we get the lake house." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Jennifer's voice called out from the kitchen. "They're here! Places, everyone!" I had to stifle a laugh at the absurdity of it, as if we were actors in a play about the perfect American family, each assigned our role. The dutiful son-in-law, the accomplished daughter, the high-achieving grandchildren, and the unobtrusive, grateful mother who knew her place, preferably out of sight in the attic. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. I hung back as Jennifer flung open the door with practiced enthusiasm, embracing her mother-in-law with exclamations about how wonderful she looked and how they'd missed her. Patricia Parker was a slim, elegant woman in her 70s who had the polished look of someone who had never worked a day in her life, but spent considerable time and money maintaining her appearance. Behind her stood Gerald Parker, a distinguished man with silver hair and the confident bearing of old money. "And look who's here," Jennifer said, finally acknowledging my presence. "My mother, Margaret. Mom, you remember Rob's parents." "Of course," I said, stepping forward with a smile. "Patricia, Gerald. It's been a while." "Margaret," Patricia said with a nod that somehow managed to look down on me despite our similar heights. "Still living in Millfield?" "For now," I replied, "though I'm considering my options." "Options?" Jennifer echoed, looking alarmed. "What options? You love your house." "A woman can change her mind," I said lightly, "especially at transitional moments in life." Jennifer frowned but quickly smoothed her expression. "Well, let's all move to the patio. The weather is perfect for lunch outdoors." The afternoon unfolded exactly as Jennifer had choreographed it. The catered lunch was served, on the stone patio overlooking the manicured lawn. The conversation revolved around Gerald's golf game, Patricia's tennis club, their recent Mediterranean cruise, and Rob's prospects for partnership. Jennifer kept the wine flowing and maintained a stream of flattering comments and interested questions. I observed it all with new eyes. In the past, I would have sat quietly, feeling gradually more inadequate as the conversation touched on experiences and luxuries I'd never had. I would have accepted my role as the less sophisticated in-law, the one who had nothing to contribute to discussions of wine regions and Swiss ski resorts. Today, I participated. When Gerald mentioned a specific vintage from a vineyard in Tuscany, I commented on how it compared to wines from the Willamette Valley in Oregon. When Patricia complained about the service at a five-star hotel in Barcelona, I shared an anecdote about a wonderful little pension I'd read about in a travel magazine. Run by a former chef who prepared breakfast for guests each morning, Jennifer kept shooting me startled glances, clearly thrown by my participation. Patricia seemed mildly annoyed that I wasn't playing my usual role of silent observer. Only Emma appeared to be enjoying the shift, hiding her smiles behind her water glass. "Margaret," Patricia said during a lull in the conversation, "Jennifer tells us you've finally retired. It must be such a relief after all those years of— what was it exactly? Home health care?" "I was a registered nurse specializing in obstetrics," I corrected. "I delivered over 2,000 babies during my career." "How hands-on," Patricia murmured, as if I'd admitted to being a plumber. "Very," I agreed cheerfully. "There's nothing quite like helping bring new life into the world. Much more rewarding than planning charity galas, though I understand that has its own satisfactions." Patricia's smile tightened. She was known for chairing the hospital auxiliary board, though her involvement was limited to organizing fundraisers rather than any actual patient care. "Speaking of which," I continued, "I understand there's a hospital fundraiser tonight at the country club. I was thinking of attending." Jennifer nearly choked on her wine. "What? Mom? You didn't mention wanting to go." "Didn't I? It must have slipped my mind. A hospital fundraiser seems like the perfect event for a recently retired nurse. Don't. You think? But," Jennifer floundered, looking to Rob for help. We didn't include you in the RSVP count." "That's easily fixed with a phone call, I'm sure," Gerald said, surprising me by taking my side. "They always set up extra places at these things. And Margaret's right. Having a career medical professional at a hospital fundraiser makes perfect sense." "Dad," Rob began, but Patricia cut him off. "It's formal attire, Margaret," she said, eyeing my simple blouse and slacks. "Black tie." "I've taken care of that," I replied, thinking of the midnight blue gown hanging in its garment bag upstairs, in the attic. "I did some shopping this morning." Jennifer looked genuinely alarmed now. "Mom, are you sure? These events can be— well, they're quite elaborate, and you've never really enjoyed formal occasions." "How would you know?" I asked, keeping my tone conversational though the question was pointed. "When was the last time you invited me to one?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Emma, my sweet ally, jumped in. "I think Grandma would rock a fancy party. She always looks nice." "Thank you, Emma," I said, giving her a warm smile. "Well, it's settled then," Gerald declared, apparently oblivious to the tension. "Margaret will join us tonight. I look forward to introducing you to some of my colleagues. On the hospital board, Margaret. Several of them are physicians who would appreciate your nursing perspective." "That sounds lovely," I said, meeting Jennifer's stunned gaze across the table. "I can't wait." After lunch, I excused myself to prepare for the evening. I gathered my shopping bags from where I'd left them and made my way up to the attic. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Jennifer's urgent whisper to Rob. "What is going on with her? She's acting completely out of character." I smiled to myself. My daughter had no idea just how out of character I was about to become. In the attic, I carefully hung the evening gown on the rolling clothes rack, smoothing out any wrinkles. I had 2 hours before my makeup appointment, which gave me just enough time for a quick trip to the local bank. I slipped out of the house while Jennifer was showing her in-laws the recent renovations to the main floor powder room. I drove to the Oak Ridge Community Bank, where I'd already set up an account online that morning. I needed to transfer some funds to make them immediately accessible. The bank manager, a young woman named Alexis, was clearly surprised when I explained what I wanted to do. "You'd like to transfer $50,000 to your new account today?" she repeated, glancing at her computer screen. "I see the account was just opened this morning." "That's right," I confirmed. "It's a preliminary transfer while I work out some larger financial changes." "May I ask the source of these funds?" she asked, her professional training evident in her careful tone. "Of course. I've recently come into a significant inheritance," I said, the half-truth coming easily. "The bulk of it is being handled by financial advisors, but I need some funds available immediately for personal use." I handed her the documentation I'd brought: identification, my existing bank details, and the information from the lottery commission that confirmed I was a legitimate winner without spelling out the exact amount. Her eyes widened slightly as she reviewed it. "Congratulations, Ms. Wilson," she said, her manner warming considerably. "This all appears to be in order. We can certainly help you with this transfer. Would you like to discuss any of our wealth management services while you're here? We have excellent options for individuals in your new circumstances." "Perhaps another time," I said. "Today I'm just focused on the immediate transfer." "Of course." She typed rapidly on her keyboard. "The funds should be available in your new account within the hour. We'll provide you with a temporary debit card today, and your permanent card will arrive by mail within 5-7 business days." By the time I left the bank, I had a new account with $50,000 at my immediate disposal. A relatively tiny fraction of my lottery winnings, but more money than I'd ever had liquid access to in my life. The feeling was both exhilarating and slightly terrifying. I arrived at the department store makeup counter precisely on time for my appointment. The makeup artist, a stylish young man named Carlos, studied my face with professional interest. "You have beautiful bone structure," he said, "and your skin is in excellent condition for your age. What's your current skincare routine?" I almost laughed. My skincare routine consisted of drugstore moisturizer and whatever face wash was on sale. "It's pretty basic," I admitted. "I'm looking for something more sophisticated for tonight." "A special occasion?" he asked as he began applying primer to my face. "You could say that," I replied. "I'm attending a charity gala at the Oak Ridge Country Club." "Fancy," he commented, selecting an eyeshadow palette. "And what look are we going for? Subtle elegance? Dramatic glamour?" I thought about Jennifer's likely expectation that I would try to blend into the background, to not embarrass her with my middle-class sensibilities. "Unforgettable," I said decisively. "I want to look unforgettable." Carlos grinned. "That I can absolutely do." An hour later, I barely recognized the woman in the mirror. Carlos had transformed my appearance with expert contouring, smoky eyes that somehow made my blue eyes more vibrant, and a deep rose lipstick that complemented my coloring perfectly. My silver-streaked hair, usually pulled back in a simple style, had been arranged in an elegant updo by the salon stylist next door, whom Carlos had called in as a favor. "What do you think?" he asked, clearly proud of his work. I struggled to find the words. "It's exactly what I wanted. Thank you." "You're going to turn heads tonight," he assured me, in the best possible way. I paid for the services and the products he recommended, tipping generously with my new financial freedom. As I drove back to Jennifer's house, I felt a growing sense of anticipation. Tonight would be the first test of my new resolve to stop accepting less than I deserved. From my daughter, from her husband, from life itself. When I arrived, the house was quiet. A note on the kitchen counter informed me that Jennifer and Rob had gone to pick up their formal attire from the dry cleaners and would be back shortly. Patricia and Gerald were resting in the guest room, and the children were at friends' houses until dinner time. Perfect. I had the space to prepare without interruption. I carried my purchases up to the attic and began the process of transformation. The beaded midnight blue gown fit perfectly, hugging my still slim figure in all the right places before flowing gracefully to the floor. The silver heels added height and confidence to my posture. I fastened the new jewelry, silver and sapphire, pieces that complemented the dress without overwhelming it, and checked my reflection in the small mirror I'd propped on a box. The woman looking back at me wasn't the Margaret Wilson who had arrived yesterday, ready to accept an attic room and dismissive treatment. This woman looked elegant, confident, and yes, unforgettable. I heard voices downstairs, Jennifer and Rob returning. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my new clutch purse and made my way carefully down the steep attic stairs, then down the main staircase to the first floor. Jennifer was in the kitchen, sorting through mail, still dressed in casual clothes. She looked up as I entered, and the envelope she was holding slipped from her fingers. "Mom?" she said, her voice rising in disbelief. "What? How? Where did you get that dress?" "I bought it today," I said simply, enjoying her shock. "Do you like it? She seemed at a loss for words. "It's Badgley Mishka, isn't it? That must have cost—" She stopped herself, apparently remembering it was impolite to discuss prices. "It's very nice. But how did you afford it?" I finished for her. "I've saved carefully over the years, Jennifer, and retirement has given me some financial flexibility." It wasn't a lie, exactly. Retirement had coincided with my lottery win, which certainly provided financial flexibility. Rob walked in, fastening his watch, and stopped, short when he saw me. "Wow, Mom, you look different." "Thank you, Rob," I said, choosing to take it as a compliment. "I'm looking forward to tonight's event." Jennifer had recovered enough to shift into management mode. "We need to leave by 6:30 to meet Mom and Dad Parker at the club. The sitter will be here at 6:15 for Emma and Tyler." "Perfect," I said. "That gives me time to say goodbye to the children before we go." Jennifer nodded distractedly, her eyes still drawn to my transformation. She seemed unsettled, as if the familiar landscape of our relationship had suddenly shifted beneath her feet. Good, I thought. It's about time. The doorbell rang at 6:15 precisely. The babysitter, a college student named Megan, did a double take when I opened the door. "Mrs. Wilson? Wow, you look amazing." "Thank you, Megan," I said, letting her in. "Emma and Tyler are in the den watching a movie. They've already had dinner." Jennifer appeared at the top of the stairs, a vision in a designer red gown that probably cost twice what mine had. She descended with practiced grace, followed by Rob in his tuxedo. "Oh, good, Megan, you're here," Jennifer said. "We'll be home around midnight. Emergency numbers are on the fridge, and I've babysit for you dozens of times," Megan finished with a smile. "We'll be fine." Emma and Tyler emerged from the den to say goodbye. Emma's eyes widened when she saw me. "Grandma! Holy wow! You look incredible." Tyler nodded in agreement. "Like a movie star, Grandma." Jennifer checked her watch. "We should go. We're meeting Mom and Dad at the club." "Have fun," Emma said, giving me a quick hug and whispering, "Show what you've got, Grandma." As we walked out to Rob's luxury SUV, I could feel Jennifer studying me, trying to reconcile this new version of her mother with the compliant, background figure she was used to. I straightened my shoulders and smiled, feeling more powerful than I had in decades. The Oak Ridge Country Club was a sprawling colonial-style building set on manicured grounds with an 18-hole golf course. As we pulled into the circular drive, valets rushed forward to take the car. Rob handed over the keys with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to such treatment. Inside, the grand ballroom had been transformed for the fundraiser. Crystal, chandeliers cast a warm glow over elegantly set tables. A small orchestra played in one corner while formally dressed, waitstaff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Along one wall, tables displayed the silent auction items, luxury vacations, fine art, exclusive experiences. Patricia and Gerald were already there, holding court among a group of similarly affluent-looking couples. Patricia wore a designer black gown with a diamond necklace that caught the light with every movement. Gerald, distinguished in his tuxedo, spotted us first and waved us over. "There you are," he said as we approached. "And Margaret, don't you clean up nicely? I almost didn't recognize you." Patricia's eyes widened slightly as she took in my appearance, a flicker of something, surprise, disapproval. Crossing her features before her social mask slipped back into place. "Margaret," she said with a nod, "that's quite a transformation." "Thank you, Patricia," I replied warmly. "Your necklace is stunning." Before she could respond, a distinguished-looking man in his 60s approached our group. "Gerald, glad you could make it. The silent auction is already exceeding our expectations." "James," Gerald said, clapping the man on the shoulder. "Let me introduce you. This is my son, Rob, his wife, Jennifer, and Jennifer's mother, Margaret Wilson. Margaret just retired after 40 years as an obstetrics nurse." "Is that so?" James looked at me with genuine interest. "Margaret Wilson? From Millfield General?" "Yes," I said, surprised. "I spent most of my career there." "Dr. James Harrington," he said, extending his hand. "I was on the board at Millfield for 15 years. Your name came up repeatedly in patient satisfaction surveys. Nurses like you are the backbone of any good hospital." I felt a warm glow of professional pride. "That's very kind of you to say, Dr. Harrington." "James, please," he insisted, "and I mean it. The medical staff still talk about the Wilson protocol for first-time mothers. Didn't you develop a specialized approach to reducing anxiety during delivery?" I nodded, genuinely touched that my work was remembered. "It was a team effort, but yes. We found that specific preparation techniques significantly improved outcomes for nervous first-time mothers." "Modest too," James said with approval. "Gerald, your daughter-in-law comes from impressive stock." I glanced at Jennifer, whose expression was a mixture of confusion and surprise. It clearly hadn't occurred to her that her mother might be professionally respected or remembered by someone in her social circle. "Would you join me for a moment, Margaret?" James asked. "I'd like to introduce you to our current chief of obstetrics. She's been working on a program for underserved communities that builds on some of your early work." "I'd be delighted," I said, accepting the arm he offered. As James led me away, I heard Patricia's stage whisper to Jennifer, "Where on earth did your mother get that dress? It looks like a genuine Bagley Mishka." The evening unfolded in ways I could never have anticipated. As Dr. Harrington guided me through the ballroom, I found myself introduced to hospital administrators, physicians, and board members, many of whom knew my name or had heard of my work. With each introduction, I felt an old confidence returning, a professional pride I'd nearly forgotten in my focus on retirement and family obligations. Margaret developed one of the first mother-centered birthing programs in the state, Dr. Harrington explained to a group of physicians, long before it became standard practice. "It was simply common sense," I said. "Mothers who feel heard and respected have better outcomes." The medical establishment took a while to catch up to what midwives had known for centuries. This earned me appreciative laughs and nods from several of the female doctors present. A woman in her 40s reached out to squeeze my arm. "I had my first baby at Millfield," she said. 17 years ago. You were my nurse. I was terrified, and you stayed past your shift to see me through it. I never forgot that." I studied her face, memories flooding back. "Dr. Levin? Caroline? Levin? You had a little girl." "Hannah," she confirmed, beaming, "now applying to colleges and planning to study medicine." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely moved. Across the room, I caught Jennifer watching us, her expression a mixture of confusion and wariness. She was accustomed to being the center of attention in her social circle, the accomplished daughter of an unremarkable mother. Tonight was upending, that dynamic in ways she clearly found unsettling. When dinner was announced, I discovered I'd been seated at Dr. Harrington's table, alongside several prominent hospital donors, nowhere near Jennifer, Rob, and the Parkers. As I took my seat, Jennifer approached, her smile tight. "Mom," she said in a low voice, "what's going on? How do you know all these people?" "I worked with many of them over the years," I explained. "Hospitals are hierarchical, but nurses and doctors do eventually learn each other's names." She frowned at my mild sarcasm. "You never mentioned knowing the chairman of the hospital board." "You never asked about my professional connections, Jennifer." I kept my tone light, but the point landed. Her cheeks flushed slightly. "Well," she said, regaining her composure, "I'm glad you're having a good time. Just remember we're all leaving together at 11. "Actually," Dr. Harrington said, appearing beside us, "I was hoping to borrow your mother for a nightcap after the event. Several of us are gathering to discuss a new initiative, and Margaret's input would be invaluable." Jennifer's smile froze. We had planned. "You and Rob go ahead without me," I interjected smoothly. "I can get a ride home later." "But Mom—" "It's settled then," Dr. Harrington said cheerfully. "Don't worry, Jennifer. I'll make sure your mother gets home safely." As he guided me to our table, I felt a small thrill of independence. For decades, I'd arranged my schedule around my children's needs and preferences. Tonight, for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was making choices based solely on what I wanted. Dinner was exquisite. 5 courses of gourmet cuisine paired with fine wines. The conversation flowed easily, touching on healthcare policy, research innovations, and personal anecdotes. I contributed thoughtfully to discussions where I had expertise and listened with genuine interest to topics outside my experience. No one seemed surprised that a retired nurse could speak intelligently about healthcare economics or the ethical implications of new medical technologies. During dessert, a chocolate soufflé I savored in small bites, Dr. Harrington leaned toward me. "Margaret, I've been meaning to ask, would you have any interest in joining our community outreach committee? We're developing programs to bring maternal healthcare education to underserved areas, and someone with your background would be immensely helpful." "I'd need to hear more," I said, surprised and intrigued by the offer. "I am retired, after all." "Of course," he chuckled. "We wouldn't want to pull you back into full-time work. It's more advisory, perhaps 1 or 2 meetings a month, some curriculum review. We could even compensate you as a consultant." "That does sound interesting," I admitted. "I've been wondering what to do with all my free time." Beside me, an elegant woman in her 60s, introduced earlier as Victoria Langley, a major hospital donor, joined our conversation. Retirement can be quite an adjustment. When my husband retired from surgical practice, he nearly drove me mad puttering around the house. Getting him on the hospital foundation board saved our marriage. She winked at me. Now I only see him at dinner and board functions, the perfect arrangement. I laughed, warming to her immediately. "I'm still figuring out this new chapter." "Well, if you need suggestions for filling your days beyond hospital committees," Victoria said, "I'm also on the board of the Oak Ridge Cultural Center. We're always looking for volunteers with practical skills. Most of our board members are good at writing checks, but hopeless at actually getting things done." "I'm very good at getting things done," I said. It was the essence of nursing, solving problems with limited resources while everyone around you panics. Victoria let out a delighted laugh. "Oh, I like you, Margaret Wilson. You must come to my charity luncheon next week. I'm hosting at my home for the Women's Scholarship Foundation." "I'd be honored," I said, genuinely pleased by the invitation. As the evening progressed, I found myself exchanging phone numbers and email addresses with several people. potential new friends and professional connections I'd never have met if I'd stayed home with Emma and Tyler as Jennifer had planned. When the formal dinner concluded and the dancing began, I was surprised to find myself approached by a distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair. "Margaret?" he said, extending his hand. "Harold Bennett. I believe we're neighbors, or were, many years ago. You lived on Maple Street in Millfield, didn't you? Back in the 80s? I studied his face, recognition dawning. Harold Bennett. From the corner house, with the beautiful garden? He smiled, clearly pleased I remembered. The very same. Though I sold that house years ago when I moved to Oak Ridge. I heard someone mention your name and I thought, could it be the same Margaret Wilson? The nurse with the young children who used to help my wife with her rose pruning? It is, I confirmed, touched by this connection to my past. Though, those children are grown now, with children of their own. As time goes by, he said with a gentle smile. My wife passed 10 years ago. The roses were never quite the same without her touch. I'm sorry for your loss, I said sincerely. Elizabeth was a lovely woman. She was, he agreed. Would you do me the honor of a dance? For old time's sake? I hesitated only briefly before accepting his outstretched hand. I'd like that very much. As Harold led me to the dance floor, I caught sight of Jennifer watching from the bar, her expression unreadable. I'd never been much of a dancer. Richard hadn't enjoyed it, and after his death, there had been few opportunities. But Harold led with a confident grace that made it easy to follow. The orchestra was playing a classic Sinatra tune, and other couples moved around us in elegant patterns. You look lovely tonight, Margaret, Harold said as we moved across the floor. Retirement clearly agrees with you. It's all very new, I admitted. I'm still adjusting. I remember that feeling. The sudden freedom can be both exhilarating and terrifying. Exactly, I said, surprised by his perception. Everyone expects you to be delighted, but there's a strange sense of loss, too. The loss of identity, he nodded. For decades, I was Dr. Bennett, cardiologist. Then suddenly, I was just Harold. Exactly, I repeated, feeling understood in a way I hadn't in a long time. Though, just Harold seems to be doing quite well. You're on the hospital board? Among other things, he confirmed. I found that retirement is what you make of it. Some people see it as an ending. I prefer to view it as a beginning, a chance to explore paths that work and family obligations never permitted before. As the dance ended, Harold kept hold of my hand. Would you join me for a drink? I'd love to catch up properly. I agreed without hesitation. We found a quiet corner away from the main crowd, and Harold went to fetch our drinks. A scotch for him, a glass of white wine for me. As I waited, Patricia Parker appeared beside me, her diamond necklace catching the light. Margaret, she said, her tone falsely bright. You've caused quite a stir tonight. Have I? I asked innocently. Half the women here are trying to figure out where you came from, she continued. No one can quite understand how Jennifer's homespun mother suddenly appears looking like this. She gestured vaguely at my appearance. Perhaps they, like you, assumed too much about me based on limited information, I suggested mildly. Patricia's smile tightened. And Harold Bennett? I saw you dancing with him. You do realize he's one of the wealthiest widowers in Oak Ridge. Is he? I said. I remember him as the kind neighbor with the beautiful garden who helped me jumpstart my car on cold mornings. His financial status never came up. Patricia looked skeptical. Well, just so you know, half the single women in town have set their caps for him since Elizabeth died. He's quite the catch. I'm not fishing, Patricia, I said, unable to resist the metaphor. Just reconnecting with an old acquaintance. She seemed about to say more when Harold returned with our drinks. Patricia, he acknowledged with a polite nod. Lovely event, isn't it? Your committee did an excellent job. Thank you, Harold, she preened slightly. We're hoping to exceed last year's fundraising total. Have you visited the silent auction yet? There's a week at a villa in Tuscany. That might interest you. I'll be sure to take a look, he said smoothly. If you'll excuse us? Patricia had no choice but to retreat, though she shot me a look that suggested our conversation wasn't finished. Harold handed me my wine and took a seat beside me. Patricia Parker, he said with a subtle smile. Always. Willing to tell everyone else how to live their lives. You know her well? Unfortunately, he chuckled. Our social circles overlap considerably. She's been trying to set me up with her sister for years. We chatted easily, catching up on decades of life events. I learned that Harold had 2 grown children, both living on the West Coast, and 4 grandchildren he visited regularly. After Elizabeth's death, he'd thrown himself into philanthropic work, primarily focused on cardiovascular research and arts education. And you? He asked. Jennifer is your daughter, I gather. Any other children? My son, David, I said. He lives in Seattle with his partner, Michael. They're both software engineers. No children yet, though they're considering adoption. You must be proud of them both, he offered. I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I love them both deeply. But parental pride is complicated, isn't it? We're proud of their accomplishments, but sometimes disappointed by their choices. Or perhaps it's just me? No, Harold said thoughtfully. I understand completely. My son chose a career path I wouldn't have selected for him. Art restoration instead of medicine. I didn't handle it well initially. Now I see his passion for preserving beautiful things, and I'm humbled by his dedication to his craft. That's wise, I said. I'm still working on that perspective with Jennifer. She's built a life that looks perfect from the outside, but sometimes I wonder if she's truly happy or just checking boxes she thinks will impress others. Harold nodded. The eternal parental dilemma, wanting happiness for our children, but not being able to define it for them. Our conversation flowed effortlessly from topic to topic. I found myself sharing thoughts and feelings I rarely expressed, even to Dorothy. Harold was an attentive listener, asking insightful questions and offering his own experiences without dominating the exchange. Before I knew it, nearly an hour had passed. Mom, Jennifer's voice interrupted my laughter at Harold's story about a disastrous hospital fundraiser involving an escaped therapy parrot. It's almost 11. We should be going. I turned to see her standing beside our table, Rob hovering awkwardly behind her. Jennifer, I said, making no move to leave. Have you met Harold Bennett? He used to be our neighbor in Millfield years ago. Dr. Bennett, Jennifer said, her tone instantly shifting to the polished charm she used with potential social connections. Of course, you're on several boards with Rob's father, aren't you? Indeed, Harold confirmed, standing to shake her hand. It's a pleasure to meet Richard's daughter. He spoke of you often when you were younger. I blinked in surprise. You knew my first husband? Briefly, Harold acknowledged. We shared some committees at Millfield General before his difficulties. The diplomatic phrasing wasn't lost on me. Richard's difficulties, his alcoholism and eventual job loss, had been a source of shame I'd carried silently for years, protecting my children from the worst of it until I finally left him. Small world, Jennifer said with forced brightness. Mom, we really should go. The sitter will be expecting us. Actually, I said, making a decision, I think I'll stay a bit longer. Dr. Harrington invited me for a nightcap with some colleagues, and Harold and I have barely scratched the surface of catching up. Jennifer's smile froze. Mom, we drove together. I can certainly give Margaret a ride home, Harold offered. It would be my pleasure. That's very kind, I said before Jennifer could object further. I won't be too late. Jennifer hesitated. clearly caught between social politeness and irritation. "Well, if you're sure." "Completely sure," I confirmed. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." With visible reluctance, Jennifer retreated, practically dragging Rob away. I caught Harold's amused expression. "I sense some tension there," he observed. "Perceptive of you," I acknowledged. "Jennifer and I are navigating some changing dynamics." "Ah," he nodded knowingly. "The moment when a child realizes their parent is an actual person with their own desires and opinions, always a difficult transition." I laughed softly. "That's exactly it. Though in our case, it's complicated by the fact that I'm staying with them for the week, and they've put me in the attic while their in-laws get the guest room." Harold's eyebrows shot up. "The attic? Surely you're joking." "I wish I were," I sighed, "complete with Christmas decorations and a bed that probably dates from the Nixon administration." "That's—" He seemed at a loss for words. "Remarkably inhospitable." "It is," I agreed, "though tonight has put it in perspective. I've spent so many years accommodating everyone else's needs that I'd forgotten what it feels like to be valued for myself." "You should always be valued, Margaret," Harold said simply. "You strike me as a remarkable woman." The warmth in his voice brought a flush to my cheeks that had nothing to do with the wine. Before I could respond, Dr. Harrington approached our table. "Margaret, I see you found Harold." "Excellent. A group of us are heading to the lounge for a nightcap and some conversation about that outreach project. Would you both care to join us?" I glanced at Harold, who inclined his head slightly. "We'd be delighted," I answered for both of us. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant blur of intelligent conversation and subtle flirtation. The hospital's executive lounge was an elegant space with comfortable seating and a well-stocked bar. Our group, 6 medical professionals, and Harold discussed everything from healthcare policy to travel destinations to recent films. I contributed where I could and listened attentively where I couldn't, feeling more intellectually engaged than I had in years. As the gathering began to disperse around midnight, Harold offered to drive me back to Jennifer's house. I accepted gratefully, though with a small pang at the thought of returning to the attic after such an evening. Harold's car was a luxurious, but understated sedan with leather seats and a sophisticated sound system playing soft jazz. As we drove through the quiet streets of Oak Ridge, I felt strangely content, despite the uncertain reception that likely awaited me. "I've enjoyed this evening tremendously," Harold said as we approached Jennifer's neighborhood. "It's not often I find someone I can talk to so easily." "I feel the same," I admitted. "It's been refreshing." He slowed the car, turning slightly toward me. "Would it be too forward to ask if you might join me for dinner while you're in town? There's a wonderful little Italian place with a garden patio that I think you'd enjoy." I hesitated only briefly. "I'd like that very much." "Excellent," he smiled, his face handsomely creased in the dim light. "Tomorrow evening? Unless you have family plans, of course." "Tomorrow would be perfect," I said, realizing I was actually looking forward to it, not just as an escape from Jennifer's house, but as an experience in itself. When we pulled up to Jennifer's house, lights were still on in the living room despite the late hour. Harold insisted on walking me to the door, a gentlemanly gesture I found endearing rather than old-fashioned. "Until tomorrow, then," he said, briefly taking my hand. "Shall we say 7 o'clock?" "7 is perfect," I confirmed. "Thank you for the ride and the conversation." "The pleasure was entirely mine," he assured me. As Harold drove away, I took a deep breath and opened the front door with the spare key Jennifer had given me. Inside, Jennifer and Rob were waiting. In the living room, their formal attire exchanged for casual clothes. Jennifer sprang up from the couch when I entered. "Mom, it's after midnight. We were getting worried." "Were you?" I asked mildly, setting down my clutch purse. I told you I'd be late. Not this late, she countered. And with Harold Bennett? Mom, do you have any idea who he is? An old neighbor, I said, enjoying her exasperation. A cardiologist, a widower, a good conversationalist. Which part concerns you? Rob snorted softly, earning a glare from his wife. He's one of the wealthiest men in Oak Ridge, Jennifer said, as if explaining something to a child. He's on the board of practically everything. His family practically built this town. How nice for him, I replied, slipping off my heels with a small sigh of relief. He's also taking me to dinner tomorrow evening. Jennifer's mouth fell open. He what? Asked me to dinner, I repeated. I accepted. But tomorrow is the family dinner I planned, Jennifer sputtered. With Mom and Dad Parker? I told you about it days ago. Had she? Perhaps in one of her many monologues about how I should behave during my visit. I don't recall that, I said. But in any case, I now have other plans. Jennifer looked genuinely distressed. Mom, what's going on with you? First the expensive dress, then monopolizing Dr. Harrington all evening, and now a date with Harold Bennett? This isn't like you at all. Perhaps you don't know me as well as you think, I suggested gently. People can surprise you if you bother to pay attention. Rob cleared his throat awkwardly. Jen, maybe we should all get some sleep. It's late, and… No, Jennifer interrupted, her voice rising. I want to know what's happening here. Mom shows up for a visit, and suddenly she's buying designer clothes and socializing with people who've never given her the time of day before. It doesn't make sense. I felt a flicker of hurt at her assessment, followed by resolve. What doesn't make sense to you, Jennifer? That people might find me interesting? That I might have value beyond babysitting your children and contributing to your lake house fund? Jennifer flushed. That's not what I meant. Isn't it? I asked quietly. Since I arrived, you've put me in the attic, excluded me from your plans, and talked about me to the Parkers as if I were some quaint relic rather than your mother. And now you're upset because I'm not behaving according to your script. That's completely unfair, Jennifer protested. We've always included you. You're just not usually interested in formal events. Have you ever asked? I countered. Or did you just assume based on your perception of me as a simple nurse who wouldn't know which fork to use at a fancy dinner? Rob attempted to diffuse the tension. It's just been a surprising evening, that's all. We've never seen this side of you, Margaret. No, I agreed. You haven't. But it's always been there. I headed toward the stairs, then paused. Oh, and regarding the lake house, I won't be contributing to the down payment. Jennifer's expression shifted from surprise to alarm. What? But we've already put in an offer based on your help. Dad said. I never agreed to give you $80,000, Jennifer, I pointed out. You assumed I would because, as you told Emma, I never say no to you. But I'm saying no now. But the money, she began, then stopped herself, apparently realizing how mercenary she sounded. I've decided that at this stage of my life, I need to prioritize my own financial security, I continued. I've worked hard for decades. Now it's time for me to enjoy the fruits of that labor. Enjoy it how? Jennifer demanded. With Harold Bennett? Mom, he's rich. People will think you're, a gold digger? I supplied the term she was too polite to say. How ironic, considering you put me in the attic and still expected me to hand over my life savings. The harsh truth landed between us like a physical object. Jennifer recoiled as if I'd slapped her. Rob looked deeply uncomfortable, shifting, his weight from foot to foot. I think, I said into the silence, that we all need some rest. It's been a long day. Without waiting for a response, I climbed the stairs, maintaining my dignity despite my exhaustion. The attic seemed even more depressing after the elegance of the evening I'd just experienced. But I changed carefully out of my gown, hanging it properly despite the inadequate facilities. As I settled onto the lumpy twin bed, I checked my phone and found a text from Dorothy. "How was the fancy party? Did you show them who's boss?" I smiled tiredly and typed, "Better than I could have imagined. Made new friends. Have a dinner date tomorrow with a handsome doctor." Her response was immediate. "What?" "Details immediately." "Tomorrow, I promised. Too tired now." "But Dorothy? I think I'm finally remembering who I am." I set my phone aside, reflecting on the evening's events. In a single night, I'd reconnected with my professional identity, made new social connections, and perhaps even kindled a romantic interest. All because I'd decided to stop accepting less than I deserved. And I'd done it all without revealing my lottery win. The Margaret Wilson who had impressed Dr. Harrington, delighted Victoria Langley, and caught Harold Bennett's attention wasn't a millionaire. She was simply me, finally allowing myself to shine. As for Jennifer, perhaps this was the wake-up call our relationship needed. For too long, I'd allowed her to define me according to her limited perception. Now she was seeing, reluctantly, that there was more to her mother than she'd been willing to acknowledge. Tomorrow would bring a new set of challenges, no doubt. But as I drifted toward sleep, I felt a sense of anticipation rather than dread. For the first time in years, I was truly looking forward to what came next. Morning sunlight filtered through the small attic window, waking me earlier than I would have liked after such a late night. I lay still for a moment, taking inventory of my body's complaints. A stiff neck from the inadequate pillow, a slight headache from the wine, and the lingering sensation of unfamiliar makeup on my skin despite my efforts to remove it all before bed. But beyond the physical discomforts, I felt something new, a quiet determination that had been building since I'd first climbed these attic stairs. Last night had been a revelation, not just because of Harold's attention or the social connections I'd made, but because I'd glimpsed the person I could be when I stopped accepting scraps of respect from my own daughter. The house below was quiet, though a glance at my phone showed it was already past 8. Jennifer was usually up by 6, maintaining her rigorous schedule of Pilates, meal preparation, and email checking before the rest of the household stirred. Her absence from the kitchen suggested she might be avoiding me after our confrontation last night. I performed a truncated version of my morning routine in the upstairs bathroom, taking care to be quick and tidy, leaving no evidence for Jennifer to criticize. Then I dressed in simple slacks and a blouse, not as impressive as last night's gown, but neat and appropriate for a day that might include another confrontation with my daughter. When I finally descended to the kitchen, I found Emma already there, scrolling through her phone while eating cereal at the island counter. "Morning, Grandma," she said, glancing up with a grin. "You caused quite a stir last night." "Did I?" I asked innocently, heading for the coffee maker. "Mom and Dad were arguing about you after they got home. Then they really went at it after you came back with Dr. Bennett." Emma's eyes sparkled with mischief. "I could hear them from my room. Mom kept saying something wasn't right and Dad told her to leave it alone. Then, when you said you were going to dinner with Dr. Bennett tonight." She made an exaggerated explosion gesture with her hands. I sighed, pouring myself coffee. "I'm sorry you had to hear that." "Don't be sorry," Emma said firmly. "It's kind of awesome seeing you stand up for yourself. Mom always makes everything about her." I gave her a sharp look. "She's still your mother, Emma." "I know," she shrugged, "but she put you in the attic, Grandma. The actual attic, with Christmas decorations and my old ballet costumes." "Where is everyone this morning?" I asked, changing the subject. Dad took Tyler to his baseball practice. Grandma and Grandpa Parker went antiquing or something, and Mom's been locked in her office since forever, probably making spreadsheets about how to fix the lake house situation. I winced slightly. "She told you about that?" "She didn't have to. The walls in this house aren't that thick. Emma bit her lip, suddenly looking younger than her 16 years. Are you really mad at Mom? Like for real? I considered the question carefully. I'm disappointed, I said finally. There's a difference. I love your mother very much, Emma. That will never change. But sometimes love means being honest about hurtful behavior instead of just accepting it. Emma nodded slowly. That makes sense. So, tell me about Dr. Bennett. Tyler and I Googled him last night. He's like super rich, and his house has an indoor pool. Emma! I laughed despite myself. He's an old neighbor and a nice man, that's all. A nice man who's taking you to dinner, she teased. Tyler says it's weird because you're old, but I told him romance isn't just for teenagers. Before I could respond to that alarming statement, the kitchen door swung open and Jennifer appeared. She was impeccably dressed as always, but the shadows under her eyes suggested she'd slept as poorly as I had. Mom, she said stiffly. I didn't realize you were up. Good morning, Jennifer, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Coffee? Already had some, thanks. She turned to Emma. Don't you have volleyball practice in an hour? You should be getting ready. Emma rolled her eyes but slid off the stool. Fine. See you later, Grandma. She gave me a quick hug before disappearing upstairs. Alone with my daughter, I waited quietly. If there was to be another confrontation, I wouldn't be the one to initiate it. Jennifer busied herself wiping already clean countertops, her movements sharp and precise. Finally, she spoke without turning around. I called about the lake house this morning. We can withdraw our offer without losing our earnest money if we do it by noon today. I see, I said. I'm sorry if my decision has caused complications. She turned then, her expression carefully controlled. It was our mistake for assuming. We should have discussed the specifics with you earlier. Her words were reasonable, but her tone suggested she still believed I was the one being unreasonable. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that decades of relationship patterns couldn't change overnight. Jennifer, I said gently, when did we stop really talking to each other? The question seemed to catch her off guard. What do you mean? We talk all the time. No, I corrected. You tell me things. You inform me of plans you've made, decisions you've reached, expectations you have. But when was the last time you asked about my life? My thoughts? My feelings? Jennifer's mouth opened, then closed again. She seemed genuinely startled by the question. We're just busy, Mom. Life gets hectic. You know how it is. I do know, I agreed. I raised 2 children while working full-time after your father left. But I still made time to ask about your day, to know who you were becoming. That was different, she said, a defensive edge creeping into her voice. We were children. You were the parent. And now I'm just, what, exactly? I asked. An ATM for your lake house? A convenient babysitter? Someone to put in the attic when more important guests arrive? Jennifer flushed. That's not fair. We had limited space and Emma offered to let me have her room, I interrupted quietly. She told me so herself. There were options, Jennifer. You chose the attic because, to you, I was the least important person to consider. Her flush deepened. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I asked. Help me understand. Jennifer looked away, her shoulders tense. You've never cared about these things before. The nice guest room, the social events, the appearances. You've always been so practical, content with simple things. Contentment isn't the same as not wanting more, I pointed out. And did it ever occur to you that perhaps I adapted to what was possible in my circumstances? That I made the best of what I had for your benefit? She looked genuinely confused. What do you mean? After your father left, every decision I made was shaped by what you and David needed. Every penny I earned went first to your education, your activities, your future. There wasn't room for luxuries or indulgences. Not if I wanted to give you both the opportunities you deserved. Jennifer seemed to be processing this perspective for the first time. But you never complained. Would complaining have helped? I asked. Would it have changed our circumstances? I chose to focus on the positive, to be grateful for what we had rather than resentful of what we lacked. And now? She asked, gesturing vaguely. This new you, with expensive dresses and dates with Harold Bennett. Where did that come from? I smiled slightly. It was always there, Jennifer. You just never bothered to look. The doorbell rang, interrupting our conversation. Jennifer hesitated, clearly torn between continuing our discussion and answering the door. You should get that, I said. We can talk more later. She nodded and went to the front door. A moment later, I heard a familiar voice that made me freeze in surprise. Hi, Jennifer. Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I wanted to bring these by for your mother. Harold, with impeccable timing. Jennifer's response was polite but strained. Dr. Bennett. How thoughtful. Please come in. My mother is in the kitchen. I quickly smoothed my hair and straightened my blouse, feeling oddly nervous. Harold appeared in the kitchen doorway, a bouquet of elegant flowers in one hand and a small gift bag in the other. He was dressed casually but expensively in tailored slacks and a light sweater that somehow made him look both distinguished and approachable. Margaret, he smiled warmly. I hope I'm not interrupting your morning. Not at all, I said, returning his smile. This is a lovely surprise. I was out for my morning walk and passed the florist, he explained, holding out the bouquet, a tea-white, sophisticated arrangement of lilies and roses in soft cream and pale pink. I thought you might enjoy these. They're beautiful, I said, accepting them with genuine pleasure. Thank you. And this, he continued, offering the gift bag, is a small token for our dinner tonight. I thought you might find it amusing. Curious, I opened the bag and pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped package. Inside was a vintage silver compact mirror, intricately engraved with flowers and vines. It reminded me of one my wife used to carry, Harold explained. She always said a lady should be able to check her appearance without apology, especially before an evening out. It's exquisite, I said, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. Thank you, Harold. Jennifer cleared her throat. I'll get a vase for those flowers, she said, her voice overly bright. She busied herself at the cabinets, clearly listening to our conversation while pretending not to. I hope 7 o'clock still works for you tonight? Harold asked. Perfect, I confirmed. Should I meet you somewhere or… I'll pick you up, of course, he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Unless you'd prefer otherwise? No, that would be lovely, I said. Thank you. Jennifer returned with a crystal vase, taking the flowers from me with a tight smile. These are gorgeous, Dr. Bennett. How thoughtful of you to bring them for Mom. Please, call me Harold, he insisted. And it's no trouble at all. Your mother and I had such a wonderful time catching up last night. It's not often one reconnects with an old friend after so many years. Yes. Mom mentioned you were neighbors in Millfield, Jennifer said, arranging the flowers with more force than necessary. Such a small world. Indeed, Harold agreed, pleasantly. Though I must say, I'm rather glad our paths have crossed again. He smiled at me in a way that brought warmth to my cheeks. Dr. Bennett, Harold, will you stay for coffee? I offered, painfully aware of Jennifer's scrutiny. I'd love to, but I have a foundation meeting in half an hour, he declined regretfully. I just wanted to confirm our plans and bring you these small tokens. You shouldn't have gone to the trouble, I said. No trouble at all, he assured me. I'm very much looking forward to this evening. As am I replied honestly. Jennifer watched our exchange with barely concealed incredulity, her hands still mechanically arranging flowers. When Harold had gone, promising to return at 7, she turned to me with raised eyebrows. "Vintage silver and designer flowers," she said flatly. "For a first date. With my mother." "Harold is a gentleman," I said simply, running my fingers lightly over the engraved compact. They still exist, apparently. "Mom," Jennifer said, her voice lowering to an urgent whisper, though we were alone. "You do realize what people will think, don't you? A wealthy widower suddenly showering attention on someone in a completely different social stratum?" "On someone like me, you mean?" I supplied calmly. "A retired nurse of modest means?" Jennifer had the grace to look embarrassed. "I'm just concerned, that's all. About both of you. People talk. Let them," I shrugged. "Harold and I are both adults well past caring about gossip." She studied me, her expression a mixture of confusion and suspicion. "You've changed, Mom. I just can't figure out why or how." "Perhaps I've simply decided it's time to live for myself for a change," I suggested. "After decades of putting everyone else first." Before Jennifer could respond, the back door opened and Rob entered with Tyler, both sweaty from baseball practice. "Hey, beautiful ladies," Rob greeted us with forced cheerfulness. "How's everyone's morning going?" "Grandma got flowers from Dr. Bennett," Tyler announced, having obviously spotted the arrangement. "Dad says he's super rich." "Tyler!" Rob admonished, shooting a guilty look at his wife. "It's fine," I said, amused by their discomfort. "Yes, Harold brought flowers. And yes, apparently he's quite wealthy. Though that's hardly the most interesting thing about him." "What is?" Tyler asked with the direct curiosity of youth. I considered the question seriously. "He's kind, thoughtful, interested in the world and the people in it. He asks questions and actually listens to the answers." I glanced meaningfully at Jennifer. "It's refreshing." Rob cleared his throat awkwardly. "Well, speaking of refreshing, I need a shower after chasing flyballs for an hour. Come on, sport, you too." As they headed upstairs, Jennifer busied herself with unnecessary tidying, avoiding my gaze. The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, she spoke without turning around. "The dinner tonight with my in-laws. They're going to ask where you are." "Tell them I had a prior engagement," I suggested. "It's the truth. They'll be offended." "I doubt that very much," I countered. "But if they are, that's unfortunate." "I wasn't consulted about this dinner when it was planned, Jennifer. You simply assumed I would be available, as you always do." She turned then, her expression troubled. "Is that how you see it? That I take you for granted? Don't you?" I asked gently. Jennifer opened her mouth, then closed it again. For once, she seemed to be truly reflecting on her actions, rather than automatically defending them. After a moment, she said quietly, "I need to start preparing for tonight's dinner. Excuse me." I let her go, recognizing that pushing further would only make her retreat more completely. Some realizations needed time and space to take root. Instead, I took my beautiful flowers and the silver compact up to my attic room, sending a quick text to Dorothy with a photo of both. Guess who surprised me this morning? Her response was immediate. "OMG, details now." I smiled and called. Her instead of texting, settling onto the edge of the bed. "It's not even noon and you're already demanding gossip," I teased when she answered. "When my best friend gets flowers and gifts from a handsome doctor, you bet I want details," Dorothy retorted. "Spill it, Maggie." I recounted the events of the charity gala, my conversation with Harold, and his surprise visit this morning. Dorothy listened with occasional gasps and exclamations of delight. "So he just showed up with flowers? That's straight out of a romance novel," she said when I'd finished. And Jennifer's face must have been priceless. "She's confused," I acknowledged, "and suspicious. She thinks I've changed overnight and she can't figure out why." "You have changed," Dorothy pointed out. "You're finally standing up for yourself. It's about damn time." "It feels liberating," I admitted. "Scary, but liberating." "And the lottery money? Still keeping that under wraps?" "For now," I confirmed. "I want to see how things play out naturally, without that complication." "Smart move," Dorothy agreed. "So what are you wearing tonight? Please tell me you bought another knockout dress yesterday." "Actually, no," I said. "But I think I'll go shopping this afternoon. Jennifer is busy preparing for her in-laws. Dinner, and I could use some fresh air. And a dress that will make Dr. Wealthy's eyes pop out," Dorothy added with a laugh. "Take pictures." After hanging up, I considered my options. The mall had served me well yesterday, but for today's shopping expedition, I wanted something different, something more personal. I remembered passing a small boutique in Oak Ridge's town center that had caught my eye. With any luck, I might find something unique there. I wrote a note for Jennifer explaining I'd be out for the afternoon and called a taxi, not wanting to borrow her car again without asking. 20 minutes later, I was strolling through Oak Ridge's charming downtown area, a district of carefully preserved historic buildings now housing upscale shops and restaurants. The boutique I'd noticed, Eloise's, was tucked between a gourmet chocolate shop and a bookstore. Its window display featured elegant, timeless pieces rather than trendy fashions. Exactly what I was looking for. A bell chimed softly as I pushed. "Open the door." Inside, the space was warm and inviting, with clothing arranged thoughtfully on wooden racks and displays. Classical music played quietly in the background. A woman about my age approached with a genuine smile. "Welcome to Eloise's," she greeted me. "I'm Eloise. Is there something specific you're looking for today?" "I have a dinner date tonight," I explained. "Something special, but not overly formal. I'd like to look elegant, but comfortable in my own skin, if that makes sense." "Perfect sense." Eloise nodded. "First dates are tricky. You want to impress but still feel like yourself." "It's not exactly a first date," I clarified. "More like reconnecting with someone from the past." "Even better," she said with a knowing smile. "Those are often the most interesting. Let me show you a few pieces I think might work beautifully for you." Over the next hour, Eloise proved to be exactly the shopping companion I needed. Attentive, without being pushy, honest without being blunt, and genuinely interested in helping me find the right look. She brought me a selection of dresses and separates that complemented my coloring and figure, offering thoughtful suggestions about accessories and shoes. In the end, I chose a silk wrap dress in a deep teal that brought out the blue of my eyes. The cut was flattering without being too revealing, and the fabric moved beautifully when I walked. Eloise helped me select a delicate silver necklace and bracelet to complete the look, along with comfortable but elegant heels. "Your date won't know what hit him," she declared as she carefully wrapped my purchases. "Though I suspect he already appreciates what he sees." I smiled, genuinely pleased with her assistance. "Thank you for all your help, Eloise. I've never had such a pleasant shopping experience." "My pleasure entirely," she assured me. "And please come back to tell me how the evening goes. We boutique owners live vicariously through our customers' adventures." I laughed and promised I would, feeling a newfound confidence as I left the shop with my purchases. On impulse, I stopped at the bookstore next door, browsing contentedly among the shelves. I selected a novel I'd been meaning to read, and a book of poetry that caught my eye, indulging myself in these small pleasures without the usual mental calculation of whether I could justify the expense. My final stop was the gourmet chocolate shop, where I selected a small assortment of truffles, a treat for later, regardless of how the evening unfolded. As I waited for my taxi back to Jennifer's house, I realized I was genuinely looking forward to the evening ahead, not just as an escape from tension with my daughter, but as an experience to be savored for its own sake. When I returned to the house, it was buzzing with pre-dinner activity. Patricia and Gerald Parker had returned from their antiquing expedition, and were in the living room sharing a bottle of wine with Rob. Jennifer was in the kitchen, supervising the final preparations for the evening's meal. Emma and Tyler were nowhere to be seen, probably banished to their rooms until needed for the formal family dinner. "There you are, Mom," Jennifer said when she spotted me. "I was beginning to wonder if you'd come back before your date." The slight emphasis she placed on the word suggested she still found the concept difficult to process. "Just doing a bit of shopping," I said, holding up my bags as evidence. "How can I help with dinner preparations?" Jennifer looked surprised by the offer. "Oh, well, everything's under control, but you could help set the table if you'd like." She hesitated, then added, "Unless you need to start getting ready soon?" "I have time," I assured her, setting aside my purchases. "Where are the placemats you want to use?" For the next half hour, we worked together in a semblance of our old rhythm. Me setting the dining room table with Jennifer's fine china, and Crystal, her preparing last-minute touches for the elaborate meal she'd planned. It wasn't exactly peace between us, but it was a temporary truce. "The flowers look lovely as a centerpiece," I commented, nodding toward Harold's bouquet which Jennifer had placed in the middle of the table. "They do," she agreed. It was kind of him to bring them. I recognized the effort it took for her to say even that much. "Harold is a kind man," I said simply. Jennifer checked her watch. "It's after 5. If your date is at 7, you should probably start getting ready." She was right, of course. Even with my simplified beauty routine, I'd need time to shower, wash and style my hair, and dress appropriately. "I'll be down before I leave," I promised. In the attic, I laid out my new dress and accessories on the bed, then gathered my toiletries for the trip downstairs to the bathroom. As I passed Emma's room, she called out to me, "Grandma, come in here a sec." I pushed open her door to find her sprawled on her bed with a laptop. "What is it, sweetheart?" "I've been doing some research on Dr. Bennett," she said, her expression serious. "You know, making sure he's not some kind of creep." I had to laugh at her protective instinct. "That's thoughtful of you, but I'm sure Harold is perfectly respectable." "Oh, he is," she confirmed, turning the laptop screen toward me. "Super respectable. Graduated top of his class from Harvard Medical School, chief of cardiology at Millfield General for like 20 years, founded a heart health foundation after his wife died, serves on a million boards. But look at this." She clicked to a different tab showing a newspaper article from several years ago. The headline read, "Local philanthropist establishes scholarship for nursing students." Below, it was a photo of Harold presenting a check to Millfield Hospital, alongside text explaining that the Elizabeth Bennett Memorial Scholarship would provide full tuition for nursing students who committed to serving in rural communities after graduation. "He created a scholarship for nurses," Emma said. "Like, in honor of his wife. That's pretty cool, right?" "It is," I agreed, genuinely touched. "I didn't know about this." "There's more," Emma continued, clearly enjoying her role as investigator. "His wife was a nurse before they got married. That's how they met. She was working at the hospital when he was doing his residency." This new information added another dimension to my understanding of Harold. No wonder he'd spoken so respectfully about my nursing career, unlike many physicians who viewed nurses as subordinates rather than colleagues. "Thank you for showing me this," I said, squeezing Emma's shoulder. "No problem," she grinned. "Just doing my due diligence. So if Mom gives you a hard time about tonight, just remember, Dr. Bennett literally funds scholarships for people like you. He obviously respects what you do." "What I did," I corrected gently. "I'm retired now." "Once a nurse, always a nurse," Emma countered. "That's what you always say." I smiled, warmed by her memory of my words. "You're right, and I should get moving if I'm going to be ready on time." The process of preparing for the evening was surprisingly pleasant, despite the limitations of Jennifer's guest bathroom. I took a long shower, dried my hair carefully, and applied my makeup with more confidence after yesterday's professional application. Back in the attic, I dressed in my new teal silk dress, added the silver jewelry, and stepped into the heels. The small mirror I'd propped on a box didn't allow for a full-length view, but what I could see pleased me. The dress flattered my figure, the color brought warmth to my complexion, and my silver-streaked hair, styled in soft waves around my face, looked intentional rather than simply aging. I opened Harold's gift, the silver compact, and checked my appearance one final time before heading downstairs. In the living room, the Parkers were still enjoying their pre-dinner drinks while Jennifer fussed with last-minute details in the kitchen. When I entered, the conversation paused as everyone turned to look at me. "Well, don't you look lovely?" Gerald said with genuine appreciation. "Is that a new dress, Margaret?" "It is," I confirmed. "Thank you, Gerald." Patricia's assessment was more measured. "Teal is a bold choice," she commented, "but it does suit your coloring." Rob, ever the diplomat, offered a safe compliment. "You look very nice, Mom. Bennett's a lucky guy." Jennifer emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. She stopped when she saw me, her expression unreadable. "Mom, you look really beautiful." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. "Thank you, Jennifer," I said softly. The doorbell rang, and Emma thundered down the stairs, calling out, "I'll get it!" Before anyone could stop her, she had flung open the front door with dramatic flourish. "Good evening, Dr. Bennett," I heard her say with exaggerated formality. "Grandma will be right with you." Harold's deep chuckle floated in from the entryway. "Thank you, young lady. You must be Emma. Your grandmother has spoken highly of you." I moved toward the door, acutely aware of the entire Parker-Wilson clan watching this tableau unfold. Harold stood in the doorway, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit with a subtle blue tie that somehow complemented my dress perfectly. He held another small bouquet, not roses this time, but elegant orchids. "Margaret," he said, his appreciative gaze taking in my appearance. "You look absolutely stunning." "Thank you," I said, suddenly feeling unaccountably shy. "You look very handsome yourself." He offered me the orchids with a warm smile. "These reminded me of you, elegant and distinctive." Jennifer stepped forward. "I'll put these in water for you, Mom. You two should get going if you have reservations." "We do," Harold confirmed. "At Luca's. I hope you like Italian food, Margaret?" "I love it," I assured him, accepting the light jacket he held out for me. "Have her home by midnight," Emma called out with a grin, earning a mortified, "Emma!" from her mother. Harold laughed good-naturedly. "I make no promises. The night is young, and your grandmother's company is delightful." As he guided me toward his car with a gentle hand at the small of my back, I felt a curious mixture of emotions: excitement, nervousness, and an unexpected lightness, as if some burden I'd carried for years had finally been set down. Behind us, I heard the front door close, shutting away Jennifer's complicated expression and the Parkers' curious stares. Ahead lay an evening of good food, stimulating conversation, and the company of a man who seemed to value me for exactly who I was. Whatever came of this dinner, whether it led to friendship, romance, or simply a pleasant memory, I was grateful for the opportunity to discover another aspect of myself. Margaret Wilson, not as mother or nurse or potential financial resource, but as a woman worthy of attention and respect in her own right. As Harold held the car door for me, I smiled up at him with genuine warmth. "I've been looking forward to this all day," I admitted. "As have I," he replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I have a feeling this is going to be a very special evening." The car door closed with a soft click, and we pulled away from Jennifer's house, away from the attic and the tensions and the narrowly defined role I'd been assigned. For tonight, at least, I was free to simply be myself, And that, I realized, was the greatest luxury of all. Luca's was exactly the kind of restaurant I'd always admired from afar, but rarely entered. An intimate space with warm lighting, linen tablecloths, and the gentle background noise of conversation and soft music. The maitre d' greeted Harold, by name, leading us to a table in a secluded corner beside a window that overlooked a charming garden patio. "I requested this table specifically," Harold explained as he held my chair. "The garden view reminded me of Elizabeth's roses that you used to help her with." "You remember that?" I asked, touched by the detail. "I remember a great deal about those days," he said, settling across from me. "You were always kind to Elizabeth, especially toward the end when she could no longer tend the garden herself." "She loved those roses," I recalled. "I was happy to help." A waiter appeared with menus and the wine list, which Harold studied briefly before ordering a bottle of Barolo. Once we were alone again, he smiled at me across the table. "I must confess something, Margaret. I've thought about you over the years more than you might imagine." "Have you?" I asked, surprised. "Indeed. I admired your strength after Richard left. The way you kept your family together, building a life on your own terms. It was impressive." I felt a flush of pleasure at his words. I never thought of it that way. I just did what needed to be done. "That's precisely what makes it remarkable," he said. "True strength often lies in simply persevering through difficult circumstances without fanfare." The waiter returned, with our wine, pouring small amounts for us to taste before filling our glasses. Harold raised his in a toast. "To reconnection," he said simply. "To reconnection," I echoed, taking a sip. The wine was rich and complex, unlike anything I usually drank. We ordered our meals, truffle risotto for me, osso buco for Harold, and settled into conversation that flowed as smoothly as it had the night before. Harold told me about his children and grandchildren, showing me photos on his phone with obvious pride. I shared stories about Emma and Tyler, about David and his partner in Seattle, about my years in nursing. "You never remarried after Richard?" Harold asked during a pause in the conversation. I shook my head. There wasn't time, honestly. Between work and raising Jennifer and David, dating felt like a luxury I couldn't afford. By the time they were grown, I was set in my ways. I hesitated, then asked, "And you?" "After Elizabeth?" A shadow passed over his face. "I tried once about 5 years after she died. A colleague introduced me to a lovely woman who had also lost her spouse. We dated for several months, but..." He shrugged. Something was missing. After that, I focused on my work, my foundation, my family. It seemed easier. "I understand," I said. "Sometimes it's simpler to be alone than to risk disappointment." "Precisely," he agreed. Though I've begun to wonder lately if that was wisdom or simply fear disguised as practicality. Our eyes met across the table, and I felt a flutter of connection, the recognition of shared experience, of parallel paths that had somehow unexpectedly converged. The meal arrived, temporarily shifting our focus to the exquisite food before us. We ate slowly, savoring each bite, continuing to share stories and observations. Harold was an attentive listener, asking thoughtful questions and remembering details from earlier conversations. It felt remarkably easy to talk to him, to share thoughts I'd kept to myself for years. "Tell me," he said as we lingered over dessert, tiramisu we'd agreed to split. "What made you decide to stand up to Jennifer now, after all these years of accommodation?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "What makes you think I've been accommodating her?" He smiled gently. "The attic, Margaret. No one who demands appropriate respect finds themselves sleeping among Christmas decorations." I laughed despite myself. "You have a point." I considered how to answer his question without revealing the lottery win that had fundamentally shifted my perspective. I suppose I reached a tipping point. Retirement gave me space to reflect on my life, what I've given, what I've received in return. The attic was simply the final straw. Harold nodded thoughtfully. Life transitions often bring clarity. When I retired from active practice, I suddenly saw relationships and patterns that had been invisible to me during the busy years. Exactly, I agreed. And I realized I'd been complicit in how Jennifer treats me. By never objecting, never setting boundaries, I tacitly agreed to be less than, to accept scraps of respect rather than demanding my due. It takes courage to change established patterns, Harold observed, especially with adult children. They become accustomed to seeing us in certain roles and resist when we step outside those boundaries. Jennifer certainly seems resistant, I sighed. Though I'm hoping she'll eventually understand that this isn't about rejecting her, but about reclaiming myself. Harold reached across the table to cover my hand with his. For what it's worth, I think the self you're reclaiming is rather extraordinary. The warmth of his touch and the sincerity in his eyes brought heat to my cheeks. Thank you, I said softly. Coming from you, that means a great deal. After dinner, Harold suggested a walk through the nearby park, which was illuminated by tasteful landscape lighting. The evening was cool but pleasant, and I was grateful for both my jacket and Harold's steadying arm as we strolled along the winding paths. I've always loved this park, Harold commented. Elizabeth and I used to bring the children here on Sunday afternoons. They'd feed the ducks while we planned our week ahead. It sounds lovely, I said. Richard was never one for family outings. Usually it was just the children and me at the playground or library. He was a fool, Harold said simply, to have had a family like yours and not treasure it. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, the soft glow of the path lights creating pools of illumination in the gathering darkness. At a small ornamental bridge over a duck pond, Harold paused, turning to face me. Margaret, I've enjoyed this evening immensely, more than any evening I can remember in a very long time. So have I admitted. I'd very much like to see you again, not just while you're visiting Jennifer, but regularly. His voice held a question, a hint of uncertainty that was endearing in a man otherwise so confident. I'd like that too, I said, surprising myself with how easily the words came. Though I do live in Millfield, not Oak Ridge. It's not exactly next door. 40 minutes, Harold said with a smile. I timed it this morning on my drive over. A small price to pay for good company. I laughed. You've thought this through. I've learned not to waste time when something, or someone, matters. His expression grew more serious. Life is too short for hesitation, Margaret. I watched Elizabeth slip away day by day, unable to stop it. It taught me to seize moments that matter. The depth of feeling in his voice moved me. On impulse, I reached up to touch his face, my palm against his cheek. That's a good lesson to learn, however painful the teaching. Harold covered my hand with his own, turning his face slightly to press a gentle kiss against my palm. The gesture, so unexpectedly tender, sent a shiver through me. It's getting chilly, he observed. Perhaps we should head back. The drive to Jennifer's house was quiet but companionable, both of us perhaps processing the subtle shift in our connection. When Harold pulled into the driveway, the house was still brightly lit despite the late hour. I suspected Jennifer was waiting up to interrogate me about my evening. Would you like to come in for coffee? I offered, not quite ready for the evening to end. Harold smiled. While I'd enjoy extending our time together, I suspect your daughter might not appreciate my presence at this hour. Perhaps another time? You're probably right, I conceded. Jennifer is likely already composing a list of questions about tonight. Let her wonder, Harold suggested with a mischievous glint in his eye. It might be good for her to realize her mother has dimensions beyond what she's assumed. Harold Bennett, I laughed. Are you encouraging me to be deliberately mysterious? Perhaps, he admitted. Or perhaps I'm simply lobbying for another dinner tomorrow evening. My club has an excellent chef, and the private dining room offers discretion from curious eyes. Are you asking me on a second date before the first one is even officially over? I teased. Definitely, he confirmed without hesitation. Unless you have other plans? As it happens, my social calendar is remarkably open, I said. I'd love to have dinner with you tomorrow. Excellent, he said, looking genuinely pleased. I'll pick you up at 7 again, if that works for you. 7 is perfect. Harold got out of the car and came around to open my door, offering his hand to help me out. At the front door, he paused, still holding my hand. Thank you for a wonderful evening, Margaret. I haven't enjoyed myself so thoroughly in years. Thank you for asking me, I replied. It was lovely in every way. Harold hesitated, then leaned in slowly, giving me plenty of time to step back if I wished. Instead, I tilted my face up to meet him, and his lips brushed against mine in a kiss that was gentle but unmistakably meaningful. When he pulled back, his eyes held mine for a long moment. Until tomorrow, he said softly. Until tomorrow, I echoed, feeling suddenly ridiculously young despite my 62 years. I watched as he drove away, then took a deep breath before turning to open the front door. As expected, Jennifer was waiting in the living room, pretending to read a book, though the television was on with the volume muted. You're back, she observed, setting down her book. How was dinner? Wonderful, I said simply, hanging my jacket in the hall closet. Luca's is excellent. It's one of the best restaurants in town, she agreed. Harold Bennett must have connections to get a table on short notice. I imagine he does, I acknowledged, though he didn't mention any difficulty with the reservation. Jennifer studied me, clearly trying to decide how to phrase her next question. So, you had a good time? A lovely time, I confirmed. Harold is excellent company, intelligent, thoughtful, genuinely interested in others. We're having dinner again tomorrow evening. Her eyebrows shot up. Already? That's fast. Is it? I asked. At my age, Jennifer, there's little point in playing games or creating artificial delays. Harold and I enjoy each other's company. Why wouldn't we want to continue that as soon as possible? I suppose, she conceded. It's just unexpected. You've never shown interest in dating before. You've never seen me with someone worth dating, I pointed out. There's a difference. Jennifer flushed slightly. That's fair. I just want to make sure you're being careful. Careful how exactly? I asked, genuinely curious about her concerns. She hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. Well, you know, Harold is very wealthy, very established in Oak Ridge society. And I'm what? I prompted when she trailed off. You're my mother, she finished lamely. I don't want to see you hurt or taken advantage of. I appreciate the concern, I said, keeping my tone mild despite the implicit insult in her assumptions. But I'm perfectly capable of managing my own relationships, Jennifer. I've been an adult considerably longer than you have. She looked genuinely worried now. But Mom, you've been out of the dating world for decades. Things have changed. People can have agendas. And what agenda might Harold have regarding a retired nurse of modest means? I asked pointedly. I don't know, she admitted. It just seems unusual. The sudden interest, the flowers, the expensive dinner, another date right away. It's like a whirlwind romance from a movie. I laughed at the description. Hardly a whirlwind, Jennifer. We're having dinner, not eloping, to Vegas. Still, she persisted. It's out of character for you. Perhaps you don't know my character as well as you think, I suggested gently. I'm not just your mother, Jennifer. I'm a woman with my own needs, desires, and capacities for connection. She looked away, uncomfortable with this perspective. The Parkers asked about you at dinner, she said, changing the subject. They were surprised you'd choose a date with Harold over family dinner. Were they? I asked, skeptical. Or were you the one who was surprised? Jennifer flushed again. Both, I suppose. Family has always come first for you. And it still does, I assured her. But family doesn't mean erasing myself or my desires. It doesn't mean accepting disrespect or dismissal. Is that how you feel? She asked, her voice small. Disrespected? Dismissed? Yes, I said simply. The attic, Jennifer. The lake house money you assumed I'd provide without discussion. The way you talk about me to others, as if I'm some quaint, limited creature, rather than a person with depth and capabilities. She was silent for a long moment, seemingly processing this perspective. I never intended, she began, then stopped herself. I didn't see it that way. I know, I said. That's part of the problem. Another silence stretched between us, less tense than before, but heavy with unspoken thoughts. Finally, Jennifer stood up. It's late, she said. We should both get some rest. I nodded, recognizing that she needed time to process our conversation. Good night, Jennifer. Good night, Mom. She hesitated, then added, I'm glad you had a nice time tonight. Really? It was a small olive branch, but I accepted it gratefully. Thank you, I did. As I climbed the stairs to the attic, I reflected on how differently I felt compared to my first ascent just days ago. The space was still cramped, the bed still uncomfortable, but the indignity of the arrangement no longer stung as sharply. Perhaps because I now had options, possibilities beyond what Jennifer chose to offer me. The next morning, I woke early again, my body still on its hospital schedule despite retirement. I dressed quietly and made my way downstairs, surprised to find Jennifer already in the kitchen making coffee. You're up early, I observed. Couldn't sleep, she admitted. Too much on my mind. Coffee? Please. She poured me a cup, adding, cream the way I liked it without asking. A small gesture, but it suggested she did pay attention to my preferences sometimes. I've been thinking about what you said last night, Jennifer began, her voice carefully neutral. About feeling disrespected. Yes? I encouraged when she paused. I didn't realize. I never intended. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry about the attic, Mom. It was thoughtless. The apology surprised me with its directness. Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. Emma offered to give you her room, she continued. She told me she'd suggested it to you directly. She did, I confirmed. She's a thoughtful girl. Jennifer looked pained. More thoughtful than her mother, apparently. You've had a lot on your mind, I said, not wanting to dwell on recriminations now that she was showing genuine remorse. Planning for the Parkers. Visit, the lake house, work obligations. That's no excuse, she said firmly. You deserved better. Emma was right to call me out on it. I smiled at the thought of my teenage granddaughter standing up for me. She's got a strong sense of justice, that one. Wonder where she gets that, Jennifer said with a rueful smile. Listen, Mom, about the lake house. We withdrew the offer yesterday, as I mentioned. But I wanted to say I'm sorry for how Rob and I approached that whole situation. We should have discussed it with you properly, not just assumed your contribution. I appreciate the apology, I said, genuinely moved by her effort. And for what it's worth, I hope you find a lake house that works within your actual budget. I think it would be wonderful for the children to have those summer experiences. Jennifer looked down at her coffee cup. It was more my dream than theirs, to be honest. I had this image of perfect family summers, everyone together making memories. She trailed off, then looked up with sudden clarity in her eyes. I think I wanted to create what I imagined other families had, the kind I saw in magazines or at the country club. There's nothing wrong with wanting beautiful experiences for your family, I said gently, but perhaps without the pressure of perfection? She nodded slowly. Maybe. She hesitated, then added, Mom, there's something else I wanted to say. I've been thinking a lot about how I've treated you, not just during this visit, but in general. Taking you for granted, assuming you'd always be available on my terms. Go on, I encouraged, sensing there was more. When I saw you at the charity gala, how everyone responded to you, how Harold looked at you. It made me realize I've been seeing you through a very narrow lens, defining you solely as my mother, as if that's all you are or could be. She met my eyes directly. I'm sorry for that too. The sincerity in her voice touched me deeply. Thank you, Jennifer. That means a great deal to me. So, she said, straightening her shoulders slightly, I've made some decisions. First, we're moving you out of the attic today. The Parkers can share Tyler's room and he can bunk with Emma. You'll take the guest room for the remainder of your visit. Jennifer, that's not necessary, I began, but she cut me off. Yes, it is. It's the bare minimum of respect you deserve. Second, I've canceled the formal dinner I was planning for tonight. Instead, we're having a casual family cookout in the backyard. Emma and Tyler helped me plan it. She took a breath. And if you'd like to invite Harold to join us, he would be very welcome. I blinked in surprise. That's very generous of you. It's not generosity, Mom. It's basic courtesy. She hesitated, then added, I'd like to get to know him better. The man who's making my mother smile like I haven't seen in years. I felt a rush of affection for my complicated, sometimes difficult daughter who was clearly trying to make amends in her own way. I'll ask him if he'd like to join us, I promised, though we did have dinner plans. Of course, Jennifer said quickly. I understand if you'd rather keep your original plans. I just wanted you to know the option is there. Thank you, I said warmly. I appreciate that more than you know. We sat in companionable silence for a few minutes, sipping our coffee. It wasn't a complete resolution to all the tensions between us, but it felt like a significant step in the right direction. I should start getting the guest room ready for you, Jennifer said eventually. The sheets need changing after the Parkers. I can help, I offered. No need. Emma's already volunteered. She stood to refill her coffee cup. She's quite the champion for you, you know. Gave me quite the lecture about how we've been treating you. I smiled, imagining my fierce granddaughter standing up to her mother. She's a good kid. She is, Jennifer agreed, and she comes by her strong will honestly. She gave me a meaningful look. I'm beginning to see where she gets it from. Later that morning, after Jennifer had informed her in-laws of the change in sleeping arrangements, to surprisingly little protest from them, I found myself comfortably settled in the guest room with its ensuite bathroom and memory foam mattress. The space felt luxurious after my nights in the attic, and I took my time arranging my belongings, including the dress for this evening, whether I ended up at Harold's club or Jennifer's cookout. As I was hanging the teal silk dress in the closet, my phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Hello? I answered cautiously. Margaret? It's James Harrington from the hospital board. We met at the charity gala the other night. Of course. Dr. Harrington, how are you? Very well, thank you. And please, it's James. I'm calling because our conversation about rural maternal health care stuck with me. I mentioned your perspective to our outreach committee yesterday, and they're quite interested in having you join us as a consultant. Would that be something you might consider? I sat on the edge of the bed, genuinely surprised by the offer. I'm flattered, James, but I've only just retired. I was looking forward to some time for myself. I completely understand, he assured me. The role would be very part-time, perhaps one meeting a month and some document review. We'd compensate you appropriately, of course. Your expertise would be invaluable as we develop these new programs. Could I think about it? I asked. It's an intriguing possibility, but I'd like to consider how it fits with my other plans. Absolutely, he agreed. There's no rush. The committee meets next on the 15th if you'd like to observe before making a decision. I might do that, I said. Thank you for thinking of me. After we hung up, I sat for a moment processing this unexpected development. A consulting role with the hospital board, something that would use my professional expertise while still allowing the freedom of retirement. It was flattering to be asked, especially by someone of James Harrington's standing. My phone buzzed with a text from Harold. Good morning, Margaret. Still thinking about our wonderful evening. Looking forward to seeing you tonight. Would 6:30 work instead of 7? The club has a chamber music quartet playing at 7:15 that I thought you might enjoy. The message brought a smile to my face. I replied, Good morning, Harold. 6:30 works perfectly. I've been invited to extend an invitation to you as well. Jennifer is hosting a family cookout tonight and has specifically asked if you might like to join us instead. No pressure either way. The club sounds lovely. His response came quickly. A family cookout? Intriguing. Perhaps we could do both. Early dinner at the club, then join your family afterward for dessert? Best of both worlds. I smiled at his diplomatic solution. Perfect. See you at 6:30. Just as I set down my phone, there was a knock at the door. Emma peeked in, her expression somewhere between excited and conspiratorial. Grandma? Can I talk to you about something? Of course, sweetheart. Come in. She closed the door behind her and flopped onto the bed. Mom told me she apologized. About the attic. Finally. She did, I confirmed. It was a good conversation. Cool. Emma nodded approvingly. So, Dr. Bennett is coming tonight? For dessert, I clarified. We're having dinner at his club first. Fancy, she grinned. Tyler and I have been Googling him some more. Did you know he donated the new cardiac wing at Millfield Hospital, and that he has a vacation house in Maine and a boat? I laughed at her enthusiasm. I did not know those things, nor did I go investigating them. Some things are better discovered in conversation. Grandma, Emma said with teenage exasperation, you have to do your research these days, but don't worry, he checks out. Total. Gentlemen, no scandals, gives tons to charity. We approve. Well, I'm relieved to have the teenage seal of approval, I teased. Is that what you wanted to tell me? No, she said, suddenly looking more serious. I wanted to ask about something else. Mom mentioned the lake house fell through because because they were counting on your money and you said no. That's essentially correct, I acknowledged. Here's the thing, Emma continued. I've been saving for a trip to Europe after graduation, a gap year thing before college. I have almost $8,000 from babysitting and birthday money and stuff. That's impressive, I said, genuinely proud of her financial discipline. Thanks. But here's the thing. I want you to have it, to help with the lake house, so everyone can stop being weird about money. I was deeply touched by her generosity, even as I immediately knew I couldn't accept it. Emma, that's incredibly kind of you. But absolutely not. That money is for your future, your dreams. Not for a lake house that would primarily benefit your parents. But if it would make things better between you and Mom... Listen to me, I said firmly. The issue with the lake house was never really about the money. It was about respect, about your mother assuming rather than asking, about being treated as an afterthought while still being expected to contribute financially. Those issues won't be solved by you sacrificing your savings. Emma considered. This, then nodded slowly. I think I get it. It's the principle of the thing. Exactly, I confirmed. And for what it's worth, I'm not worried about the state of my relationship with your mother. We're working through things. Adults can disagree and still love each other deeply. I guess, she said, not entirely convinced. So if it's not about the money itself, would you help with the lake house if Mom really asked properly? Like, with respect and stuff? I hesitated, knowing my answer would likely get back to Jennifer. That would depend on many factors, Emma. But I will say this. I've always wanted the best for your mother, for all of you. That hasn't changed. She nodded, apparently satisfied with this non-committal answer. Cool. So, what are you wearing tonight? For dessert with Dr. Bennett? The abrupt change of subject made me laugh. I haven't decided yet. What would you recommend? Something awesome, she said decisively. You've been killing it in the style department this visit, Grandma. Keep it up. After Emma left, I found myself reflecting on our conversation, particularly her question about whether I would help with the lake house if asked properly. The truth was, with my lottery winnings, I could easily buy the entire lake house outright. No mortgage needed. But that wasn't the point, was it? The issue had never been my ability to contribute, but rather how I was valued independent of my financial usefulness. I picked up my phone and texted Dorothy. Jennifer apologized for the attic. Progress. Her reply came almost immediately. Miracles do happen. What changed her mind? I thought about it for a moment, then typed, I think she finally saw me. As a person, not just her mother. Having Harold in the picture hasn't hurt either. Dorothy's response made me smile. Nothing like a handsome doctor showing interest to make everyone suddenly realize your worth. Speaking of which, when do I get details about last night? Later, I promised. But it was wonderful. Dinner again tonight. There was a knock at the door, and Jennifer peeked in. Mom, do you have a minute? Of course, I said, setting aside my phone. Come in. She entered, closing the door behind her, and sat in the armchair by the window. Emma told me Harold is coming for dessert tonight. That's great. I've already told Mom and Dad Parker, and they seem interested in meeting him properly. I hope that won't be uncomfortable, I said. It'll be fine, she assured me. Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something else. She took a deep breath. The lottery ticket on your dresser. I noticed it when I was helping move your things from the attic. My heart skipped a beat. I'd forgotten about the envelope, containing the lottery confirmation, which I'd tucked into my suitcase and later placed on the dresser without thinking. You went through my things, I asked, buying time to collect my thoughts. No. Jennifer looked horrified. Of course not. The envelope fell when we were moving your suitcase. I picked it up and saw the lottery commission seal. I didn't open it or anything. I nodded, deciding in that moment that it was time for honesty. I won, Jennifer. A significant amount. Her eyes widened. How significant? 2 million, I said simply. 1 after taxes, taken as a lump sum. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Mom, that's incredible. When? How? Why didn't you tell us? It happened just before I came to visit, I explained. I was planning to share the news during my stay, to celebrate with all of you. But then we put you in the attic, she finished, understanding dawning in her eyes. And talked about the lake house money. Oh my God, Mom. You must have thought we were horrible. Not horrible, I corrected gently. Just unaware of how your actions affected me. The lottery win gave me perspective, Jennifer. Suddenly, I could see clearly how I'd been allowing myself to be treated, and I decided it was time for a change, regardless of my financial situation. So the dress, the confidence, standing up to us, that wasn't because of the money, she asked, clearly trying to process this revelation. The money gave me options, I acknowledged. but the desire for respect, for recognition as a complete person with my own needs and desires, that's always been there. I just finally decided to insist on it. Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, absorbing this information. And Harold? Does he know? No, I said firmly. And I'd prefer to keep it that way for now. I'd like to know that his interest is in me, not my sudden wealth. She nodded slowly. That makes sense. A small smile touched her lips. Though I think it's pretty clear his interest is genuine, the way he looks at you. You noticed that too? I asked, feeling suddenly shy. Everyone noticed, Mom. Her smile widened. It's actually really sweet, and kind of inspiring, to be honest. Inspiring? That connection, that spark, at any age. It gives me hope for the long haul with Rob. She hesitated, then added, I won't tell anyone about the lottery. Not even Rob or the kids. That's your news to share when you're ready. Thank you, I said, genuinely touched by her discretion. I appreciate that. Jennifer stood, smoothing her slacks with a nervous gesture. So, you're a millionaire now. That's going to take some getting used to. I'm still the same person, I pointed out, just with more options. And we're still stuck with the attic when you visit, she joked weakly. Actually, I said, I've been thinking about that. With this new financial freedom, I'm considering buying a small place here in Oak Ridge, somewhere to stay when I visit, but also, well, Harold and I are enjoying getting to know each other. Being closer would make that easier. Jennifer's eyebrows shot up. Wow, that's fast. At my age, Jennifer, there's no point in moving slowly when something feels right, I said, echoing my words from the night before. I'm not saying I'm moving here permanently, just creating options for myself. She nodded, seeming to accept this. Well, if you do decide to buy something here, I'd be happy to help you look. Real estate is kind of a hobby of mine. I'd like that, I said, touched by the offer. After Jennifer left, I sat for a long time thinking about how dramatically my life had changed in just a few days. The lottery win had certainly altered my financial reality, but the true transformation had come from within, from my decision to demand respect, to assert my own needs, to see myself as worthy of consideration and care. And now, unexpectedly, there was Harold, a man who seemed to value me for exactly who I was, lottery winnings or not. A man who looked at me and saw not just Jennifer's mother or a retired nurse, but a woman of substance and interest. I reached for my phone and texted him, looking forward to seeing you tonight, both at the club and for family dessert afterward. His reply warmed my heart. Not as much as I'm looking forward to seeing you, Margaret. These hours can't pass quickly enough. At 62, I was discovering that life could still surprise you, with new possibilities, new connections, new versions of yourself waiting to emerge. The attic had been a low point, but perhaps a necessary one. Without that indignity, I might never have found the courage to stand up for myself, to demand better, to embrace this new chapter with such wholehearted enthusiasm. As I began preparing for the evening ahead, I felt a deep, quiet contentment settle over me. Whatever came next, with Harold, with Jennifer, with my new financial freedom, I would face it as this new version of myself, Margaret Wilson, not defined by others' perceptions or needs, but by my own choices and desires. The woman who had been put in the attic was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, clearer, and vastly more interesting, someone I was just beginning to know and appreciate fully. And that, I reflected with a smile, was the real jackpot. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.